So that's why today, if we say so and so in the office as a president, the people will say, no, the constitution, we need just to implement the constitution. How do we implement it? It is captured. You cannot fully implement it because that again was by design. Where wow. So you can go ahead and ask that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it. I know all of you who are here. We welcome you to the discussion again. I see O'Brien is there. Tamasha is there. Abdullah Bukuja Paju. Because you like to play games with me. I want to set you straight. Lusinski yuko pale. Aya Baby pia yuko pale. Asanteni sana sana pia naona yuko pale. Japunji pia yuko. Everybody that's coming in next, I want us to discuss a little bit about, and let's just head this straight on. In what ways do politicians and political parties exploit ethnic divisions for their own gain? In what ways, in your view, do politicians and the political parties exploit ethnic divisions for their own gain? Academia, I'll give you 2 more minutes because I interrupted you there. Answer that question and then we'll go to AK. Asante.
Okay, the way our politics is structured is that they say all politics local and they will start from their home base. So where you come from, if it's not in urban center, it is predominantly by your ethnic group. So you'll start from there. So to do away with it, that is not very easy. That can happen maybe in urban centers, but as long as we are majority of us in the rural is more or less not quite, it is not very difficult to do away with that. Because when you go back home, most likely you will speak the local language to address those people, because majority of them, there is no need of addressing the national language when you understand their language and they're one of you. Why do you only need to use national language when people do not understand your mother tongue? So that again is a challenge. And our parties are, you can say they are national in the way that under the law, but if you now go into the details, you realize that even though they are national, you will always trace them to a particular region or ethnic group, because even the position in the party will be predominantly, or the people who make decision in that party are ethnically inclined to a particular group or persons. So that's a problem. And you look at the distribution, especially during the elections, you realize that those parties just get many votes depending on the number of people affiliated to that party ethnically. You take even ODM is not very ODM members elected in Mount Kenya. Not because ODM is not a party, but because it is perceived like it's a Luo party. The same, you will go to Luo Nyanza and get not very elected on Jubilee or UDA, because they will affiliate that party with a particular, the party leader. Where does that party leader come from? It's a Kalenjin or it's a Kikuyu. Therefore, that party belongs to Kikuyu or Mount Kenya. And that's a fact. You cannot run away from that. So that is how it has been. ODM have tried to distribute, but still it is perceived. And that's why you can see today, people will tell you that if Sifuna leaves ODM, then ODM will be reduced to lower fare. So I think that, again, which is not true, but that's the case. Thank you for now.
Asante sana. Dolphin, sijui kama umerudi, bado uko hapa au bado umeshikika kidogo Dolphin? Aya, kama Dolphin bado ameondoka kidogo, AK nakupa fursa hii. I'm giving you the opportunity, and the question that we are diagnosing right now is the political influence into, or the ethnic influence into politics, or the political influence into ethnicity. So politicians have taken advantage of ethnic divisions. AK, please, karibu sana.
Yeah, thank you so much, and apologies from the previous side. My mic was on. I don't know. I was trying to mute it, but anyways, thanks for this opportunity, and hi everyone. my interest lies a deep dive when it comes to Kenyan geopolitical situations. When you ask me the particular questions, I would actually take you back from the papers which had a deep writings on wall, especially on the BBC side as well as the KPMGs and many other research papers. In fact, even Daily Nation is also one to contribute. Now, if you look at ethnic group, sorry, I may have to just digress for for a minute, and then I'll come to your question. Does ethnic group make a big difference when it comes to elections of Kenya or any part of the Africa, even for the world? Yes, 100%. You cannot remove that. There's no point even saying that is there a way that we can do away with ethnic groups? Impossible. It's been over ages that the ethnic groups have always said their say in their matter of power, authority, and also delegations. If you look at three previous elections on the voter turnout, you see Kikuyu, Luo, Kamba, Luya, and Kalenjin have been the major ones. And they have been the major ones when it comes to voter turnout ratio also. I wouldn't go into statistics because I am a statistics guy. I would love, but for the time what I have, I think I'll keep it short. Now, coming back to the question, how is any ethnic group is benefited? Now, you have to go back to the government contracts to understand, to make it more easy to relate your question. The representation in public sector, I'm talking about the jobs what you get, the contracts what you get, because that equates your the major part of the budgets going into government projects. That's very important for any ethnic group to get involved when it comes to government projects. So Kikuyu, they get 20 to 25% signing for major heads. And then second is Kalenjin, they're getting around 11 to 15%. Then Luya, they get 11 to 12%. Then Luo get 10%, and Kamba get 9 to 10%. But Luo, Luya, and Kamba have some influence, but the major influence are two big ethnic groups, Kikuyu and Kalenjins. Why? Because they get the big chunk of orders, contracts, because they being the primary bidders and they collaborate with international firms. But the stake is 60-40%. So yet they make a lot of contribution when it comes to taking the revenue or the implementation of the projects. Obviously, their own ethnic group people get appointed in terms of workflow and also workforce. And even coming to that matters, the employment. You would be very shocked to see recruitment. There is a cap. The system actually has a recruitment cap. Kikuyu gets capped at 17% recruitment for the government jobs, and the Luya gets 13%. Kalinjan gets 12.8%, and Luo gets 10%. So when these kind of formats are there in the system, if you want to go and remove the system just because you say that ethnic politics is holding Kenyan hostage, then that makes no real sense, because how are you trying to tell the system is wrong? Because the system is made out of all these groups. Coming to the last part, somebody was asking, we can talk about solutions. There is no solutions to this. The only thing is acceptance and probably identifying the right kind of people whom you identify within these groups and elect them. Which I think it's a question to be answered by the individuals rather than the groups itself, because every person has their own conscience of who's going to be the best. Can I take one more minute, my brother?
Yes, you
Or
have it. Thank you for being kind.
yeah, thanks so much. So when it comes to the geopolitical situation, when it's talking about the dominant tribes in in the government, you always see there's a balances, and this balances has been maintained from past 2 decades. And then everybody knows in the public sector, when it comes to the procurement officers, the recruitment of the main individuals, the key decision maker, it's always done by the elected president from that particular day, because he makes those crucial changes because he knows what has been promised during the elections and how many funds have been raised. So that's the this whole equilibrium maintained. So ethnicity will always be there. That's my submission.
Wow, you've painted a very gloom picture, AK. Unasema ya kwamba wewe unaona hii kitu haina solution. We just deal with it. Yeah, Western ulikuanga next. Na nataka nikuulize twofold. I want us to finish the history so that we can move forward, because the question that I ask is a current question. But I wanted us to have a clear understanding of what role Western, because you're a scholar of history or politics, what role did colonialism play in this matter, tribalism? Because I think we need to be clear on that, and then we continue with the current question that I just asked Western.
General things. In fact, Wanda said that it doesn't have a role. Factually incorrect. Factually incorrect. Because then what does it mean when people talk about divide and conquer? What does that even mean? The colonialism was about divide and conquer. What does that mean? You set up one ethnic group against the other. That's what it means. And it was more than that. It was also about, remember, missionaries worked hand in hand with colonialists. So where missionaries pitched camp, whether it's in Kenya, whether it's in Nigeria, whether it's in South Africa, those communities had access to education earlier than the other ethnic groups. And therefore, when the colonialists left, naturally it's those ethnic groups that had access to education that took over the levers of power. Such is the case in South Africa, the case in Nigeria, and you can go on and on. Secondly, it doesn't mean that the ethnic groups that were discriminated against by colonialists were left behind. Nigeria is a case study that the colonialists and the missionaries concentrated in the south and southwest parts of the country, predominantly Christian, ignored the north, Muslim, as far as education is concerned. But what they did was they looked at the Hausa Fulani as suitable for military purposes. So they were recruited into the army. Well, they participated in post-colonial coups. And what they didn't get through formal education, they could get through the barrel of the gun. And so they could compete against their fellow compatriots who had gone to school. With them, they could use the gun. Look at Kenya, the Mombasa road from Mombasa to Malaba. That is the place where the economic activity is concentrated. And it hasn't changed. That road from Mombasa, Nairobi, Nakuru, Eldoret to Uganda, that is where the economic activity happens. Outside of that road, nope. Legacy of colonialism. Legacy. These stereotypes you talk about, part of the legacy of colonialism. The stereotypes you hear Kenyans use against one another, where did they come from? Legacy of colonialism. Therefore, I'm saying this, Mjadala, you become ethnically conscious when you realize there's something called the nation state. Before we were, this small, self-autonomous, if you like, ethnic groups. People would fight over resources like water, pasture. If you're pastoralist, you're agriculturist, fight over those things. It's not for dominance. Defense of your territory, or some other ethnic group has encroached on territory because of natural forces. Rains have failed and what have you. After that, this Westphalian state coming into being, now you have got power and the capitalist economy, upward mobility, and the benefits of modernity, potable water, paved roads, education opportunities, jobs, cushy jobs in the public service, in the government, hospitals, and name it. These things are coming with this colonial state. That's why it differs. And therefore, you become conscious. If you lose out on a government job or a tender, as people are saying that, you become conscious. Who did it? Suddenly you realize the people dominating the state are affiliated to the person at the helm, who is the president. You become ethnically conscious. Politicians start mobilizing along that line to make claims on the state that for us to access this power, we must also mobilize ethnically. And if we are small, we must reach out to other ethnic groups that are discriminated, been left out. And we see how we can compete for this power, which answers your question about political party formation. Now, Mofo should answer to you, Mjadala, why Nairobi-Mombasa Highway, Nairobi-Nakuru-Eldoret Malaba Highway has never been expanded from independence to date, despite the heavy traffic that it carries. But priority was given to Thika Road. You get me? And I'm saying this is the artery of the country in terms of transportation and haulage of people. So when he tells you that these decisions are made in parliament, he's lying to you. Because you know clearly that William Ruto controls parliament, doesn't he? It's not an invention under William Ruto. Previous governments are also beholden to the executive. So let him tell you, refer to the Hansard, where parliament deliberated on the construction of Nairobi Expressway, or the construction of SGR, where parliament was involved. And if parliament is involved, it means citizens were involved, because those were mega infrastructure projects. Kenyans would be bound by those contracts. So when were the deliberations held across the board? When were deliberations held to move the port of Mombasa from Mombasa to Naivasha in somebody's piece of land, Uhuru Kenyatta? When were those deliberations held in parliament? Look, what Mofo is telling you is something that has been used over the years, that you can, absolve yourself of the deliberate decisions you make to discriminate against people by referring to something called the constitution or the system. No, you applied for that, and it's the system that was gauging who is qualified and who is not qualified. So the system locked you out. But who programmed the system to lock you out? It's a person. So this system is prejudiced against you because it was set up not to recognize you and lock you out. And therefore the person will tell you, no, it was a system that was gauging people and, screening people. You are not screened by a human being, but systems are programmed. Then it takes you to something called the constitution. No, in Singapore, it's not the constitution, Mjadala, I'm telling you. It is deliberateness by the leadership in Singapore. The constitution is just a framework. It's not going to ensure that there is equitable allocation of resources in Kenya in and of itself. Well, the Constitution of Kenya does not talk about ethnic discrimination, does it? But does ethnic discrimination happen in Kenya? It does. The Constitution does not talk about extrajudicial executions. Does it? It doesn't. Do the police kill Kenyans? Yes, they do. The Constitution does not permit corruption. Does it? Is corruption run away? Yes, it is. So when somebody takes you to the Constitution, no, they're lying to you. The Constitution is as good as the people who implement it, the people who interpret it, the people in positions of power and who make decisions. This paper in and of itself is useless. It's not going to protect your life. It is your government that will protect your life. It's not going to ensure that you have got access to quality education. It's the government that will ensure that you have access to quality education. It's not going to give you a job. It's the people who are in power based on their decisions that will ensure that you have a job. So don't listen to people who take you to the Constitution, that piece of paper. It has no agency. It's human beings who've got agency. And then somebody talks about rotational presidency. That is it's like Band-Aid. it is the rotational presidency amongst many other things. It's not in and of itself. That's not the magic wand. But it's part of efforts towards nation building, building a cohesive society. Because I'm saying that other countries do that. Singapore that I mentioned does that. Nigeria does it. Tanzania does it. South Africa does it. You can go on and on and on. They do it because they know it doesn't happen by chance. Building a nation state out of multiple ethnic groups, it's not something you pray over. It's something you work for. That's why in Kenya we talk about the national project has collapsed. It's a project to build a cohesive, united country out of multiple ethnicities, multiple identities. It's a project like building a house. It's not something that you just pray over and you wake up, make a speech, and then it disappears. So tribalism is not inconsequential to ordinary people. Somebody said that. It's not. Because you're the one who's going to be locked out of a job. Raila Odinga, Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto, these are people who belong to the same class. They can meet and talk, even after insulting one another today. They'll meet tomorrow and laugh. Raila Odinga, when elections are held, his material conditions don't get affected. If anything, they improve, depending on the deals he can make with whoever has won elections. So it's you, the ordinary person, whose material conditions either remain constant or they plummet. So for somebody to tell you, no, ethnicity is not a big deal to ordinary, but it's the mere mortals who pay the ultimate price. They're the ones who bear the brunt. Get it abundantly clearly. These politicians can cut deals, purport to insult one another, purport to call one another names, but you would be surprised their children intermarry. They do intermarry. You'll be surprised they have got companies together. You'll be surprised.
If you allow me, Weston.
Yes, Mujadala.
And I'm glad that you named those three names because that's where I want us to go on. You've done well answering the history part of it. Now I want you to answer this part. Gachagua has been explicit in making Kikuyu his priority. And many, including I, have seen that as a very ethnically grounded politics. I want you to comment on that.
Well, Mujadala, Gachagua is not an aberration. I've said this again and again. I remember, Mujadala, let me tell you one thing. When I tell you that, unlike some people here, I don't exist in a bubble. Soon after this government was sworn in, if you people recall, Gachagua from day one started saying very, very unnerving things. Even after he was sworn in, some people didn't like his speech. They found it very offensive. And he continued, he doubled down. And people say, no, what kind of a person is this? At some point, he was really, loathed by many Kenyans. I remember I told some people, I think it was students, that do you know that if Gachagua was to run for president, he would do extremely well? They couldn't believe me. He could do extremely well because he's not a strange person. He's actually a typical Kenyan politician. So what Gachagua is doing is that he's amplifying what politicians do subterraneously. That's what he's doing. His politics is not strange. People who came before you actually implemented this politics without going public the way he's doing. The difference is that he has no shame about going public with that kind of politics. That's the difference. But those who came before him purported to be suave and polished. So publicly, Jomo Kenyatta will talk about national unity, but he was a tribalist. Daniel Moi will talk about national unity, but he was a tribalist. You have to go and look at his decisions, his appointments. He was tribal. Mwai Kibaki the same, talk about national, but he was a tribalist. The same with Uhuru Kenyatta, tribalist to the core. But unlike Kashagwa, they didn't speak openly about their prejudice and bigotry. To see their bigotry, you have to go and see their appointments, the decisions they make, how they relate to the constitution, how they relate to Kenyans, this multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious society. They are very parochial, ethnocentric, ethno-regional. Hence, the inequalities we're talking about. Because these inequalities didn't start in 2022. They've been there from 63. Who was responsible for those things? His predecessors. But Kashagwa, it doesn't mean he must get a free pass, Mujadala. The danger with this politics is that it could actually precipitate something worse. Why? Because when you incessantly profile people on the basis of ethnicity or race or religion, and you happen to be in power, that could give hoodlums and ethnic ideologues chance to actually visit atrocities on those people who are profiled. That's what happens. So the language is using is dangerous because it's genocidal. When you come up with hierarchies amongst people, it's just like Adolf Hitler, that, you know, we've got this ideal human being who is supposed to live, has got a right to be alive. And then you've got these ones who are very useless. They're superfluous human beings and must be exterminated. The same thing in Rwanda. There are people you think need to live, deserve to live, and the others who are like cockroaches must be exterminated. So his language is dangerous in that sense. Because with the time, the society, when they listen to that person continuously, well, if you're a Kikuyu, you'll believe that actually you are the top dog in Kenya. And those who are not mentioned, who are discriminated against, who are considered to be peripheral ethnic groups in Kenya, if you don't push back, you may succumb to inferiority complex and think that you're useless. Now, that kind of a society is where the Hutu in Rwanda would take machete and butcher Tutsi. And if you read literature in the aftermath of genocide in Rwanda, the Tutsi Hutu militia, they would actually chop off the tendons of the Tutsi. Tutsi are tall people. So they would say, you people who historically you're considered to be beautiful and you're tall and the Hutu are short and they're dark and what, want to show you. We're going to chop off your tendons. Resentment. What he's doing is building resentment within the Kenyan society. So that if he continues like this, Mujadala, I can predict to you that his opponents will actually counter this politics and campaign on the very, very mode, ethnic mobilization. And they will tell other ethnic groups that, look, the people are fighting William Ruto are not fighting him because of anything transcendental. They're not fighting him because of good governance or constitutionalism or the rule of law. They are fighting him on the basis of ethnicity. Listen to what this character is talking about, and consistently so. So if you want to align yourself with Rigathi, be sure that if he happens to be close to the center of power, you have no place there. So to protect yourself, ensure that you lock out someone like this, or whoever he endorses for president must be locked out. I'm afraid that politics will take that trajectory, which would be extremely dangerous and very damaging to all of us, which why I'm insisting we must call him out. That politics is not something you can say, no, he's injecting. No, he's helping us to get rid of William Ruto. Because his opponents will counter, and they will not counter with policies and constitutionalism and rule of law, will counter with similar base politics and mobilize as such and tell the rest of Kenyans, for you to be respected, you Luos to be respected, you Luyas to be respected, Mijikenda to be respected, to Rukana, you will have to ensure that you lock out this Rigathi from power again. And ensure that one of your own is in power to do away with this, what some are calling Kikuyu exceptionalism, Kikuyu supremacy. That's why I'm saying we have to call him out. And calling him out is not like you're being tribal. Calling him out, you're calling him out for the preservation of the Kenyan state as one indivisible, indissoluble Kenyan state, where every other Kenyan has got a stake. That's the reason why he must be called out. But if you let him pass and continue, I'm afraid we will wake up tomorrow and there may be no country. I think I've answered your question.
You have exquisitely so. Weka kikomo hapo, tutaendelea, tutazidi kabisa. Asante sana. Najua Mofo ulimtaja jina na anaweweseka sana, anataka kujibu. Mofo kuna kama dakika moja na nusu hivi, ilmradi tuweze kusikia wale ambao hawajaongea bado.
Thank you, Mjadala. Mjadala, first of all, I need to express my consternation that I actually picked the mic after academia, but I spoke before academia, and when he came, all he did was just, controvert my position, and I wondered what he had in his mind. The other side, Jandala, perhaps you know, maybe you don't know, I've offered my candidature for a position of member of parliament. And the reason is because for the longest I have understood that Kenyans do not understand the role of a member of parliament. And it is for this reason that I want to be in the center of influence in policy decision, where we can have proper representation of the people, and especially when it comes to the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And for anybody to tell you that the parliament does not have a role in appropriation of budget, they are egregiously wrong and deliberately so. But importantly to me, Mjadala, I have grown in Nairobi. I went to Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. And this was the time when Thika Road was under construction. Believe it or not, there are instances you'd spend 4 hours when it was dual carriage with 2 sides on both sides. 4 hours to reach Nairobi. I do not know how much the situation has been ameliorated today, and especially early in the morning when you're going to Nairobi from Thika. Tell me what time in the day that the road between Kisumu to Kericho, it will take you more than necessary in terms of the traffic jam. These are wrong discussions we are having here when we are talking about the issue of when expressing our biased projection as far as the issue of national cake is concerned, and coming up with egregious pronunciation of terms or misconstructions of terms like affirmative actions. Then I think what we need to have in terms of candid discussion is the number of, say, hospitals, the number of schools distribution, more than other infrastructures and road. And the reason is we cannot have the road equivalent to Mombasa Road from Mombasa to Nairobi built
Let me interrogate something.
Between Eldoret and Kisumu, because there's no economic significance vis-a-vis the cost of such constructions. So
okay. There's something you said that I want us to know. Tuko na time, usijali hata kidogo, sita kukata ati abruptly at stand. No. Tuko na time, but we have to nuance some things. You've said that schools and roads and hospitals and schools over infrastructure. That's exactly what you just said moments ago. And this is recorded, so really we can go back later and listen to this. But then we've seen recordings or video clips of children not able to go to the school because there's no road to take them to that school. So if you are going to choose one kind of development over another, then I think you're really missing the point here. Don't you think, Mofo?
That's not exactly what I'm saying. What I'm saying is...
Okay, clarify.
What I'm saying is the equivalent of Thika Road, we don't need it between... The equivalent of Thika Road, we don't need between Kisumu and Kericho. What I'm saying, it is sufficient. But perhaps the question is of the feeder roads. I have talked about the issue of the parliament as the center of representation and appropriation of budgets.
I want to
it is
take
a
you back.
question of the people.
Unaenda haraka sana. I think that if you want to be member of parliament, tuende pole pole tu, because you are an aspiring leader, so let's talk so that you convince us. Why is it that you don't think that the highway between Nairobi and Kisumu to Malaba needs attention like the others?
It is an issue. It is about the economic significance.
So you don't believe that the road from Nairobi to Kisumu has any economic significance?
It is not a priority over other things like health and education.
So Thika Road was a priority over health and education.
And I've told you this.
No, it's a yes or no. Just say yes or no.
You know, there's somewhere you want to corner me, but before I say yes and no, before I say yes and no, allow me to express myself.
You have time, usijali. Ni wewe tu na mimi.
Okay, in such circumstances, I don't want to say yes and no, because
why?
The reason I'm saying this is because listen to this, Jadala. We've had discussions in Parliament, for example, where I'll give you an example of Didi Nyoro. Didi Nyoro, when he sat as a chairman of the budget, he was accused of disproportionately giving himself so much money. But when we looked in the budget, was that the case? The answer is no. So where does the money go?
Mimi sitaki uende huko. Mimi nataka kurudisha kwa historia ya road, kwa sababu umedeclare kama an aspiring member of parliament ya kwamba there's no economic benefit of the Nairobi to Kisumu road. Now show me why you think that the Thika road has more economic power than the road from the one that goes all the way to Uganda now. I'm not talking only some mananazi kutoka Thika. I'm talking this one goes all the way to Central Africa.
Okay. The reason is, number one, we are talking about the issue of settlements, right? The issue of settlement in terms of the number of people it carries, the number of people it serves, and the amount of goods that the road carries. Okay.
Correct.
And I asked you on the same issue. I asked you at any single time, even early in the morning, you find too much traffic jam. Tell me where you find with the current road between Eldoret and Kisumu, where do you find traffic jam at what time?
No, we're talking the whole highway from Nairobi all the way to Malaba, right? To Kisumu.
Yeah, but I'm being strategic, right?
Okay, let me tell you, very easy. I have traveled the road between Nairobi and Naivasha quite a bit, and then all the way to Nakuru quite a bit. And sometimes it's unpredictable when there will be traffic. Umeona how many shots of watu wakienda nyumbani long weekend Friday, kuna kuangana traffic between Nairobi na Kinongi. Umeona mara ngapi between Nairobi or even Naivasha to Nakuru? Umeona mara ngapi? It's so many times. So I'm not going to play this game like that road doesn't have traffic. Let's not. I want us to go back to this point, and this is your final submission. 2 minutes. You said that there's no priority, there's no economic priority for establishing that road as a big dual highway. Why?
You keep asking the same question. I've told you in terms of
because you've not responded to it.
I've told you you've got to look at the sentiments. Look at the number of people it serves. You need to look at the amount of goods and services it is servicing.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Let's go step by step. So you've given me the parameters, the number of people, the goods and services, all that stuff. So you want to tell me that road doesn't have enough significance of goods, people, and economic services that it needs priority.
I mean, these are issues that are quantifiable, right? These are issues that are quantifiable. For example, you've asked me the issue of between Naivasha and Nairobi. Well, the answer is you are correct in such interpretation. When that road is expanded, the other question will be, who are the people who are predominantly occupant of that region? And that is where the problem is, Mujadala.
What's the problem? Explicitly said, because we for those who are joining us, Asanteni Sana, we're interrogating. Mofo has made the point here that I'm making him make sense, because we have to have critical discussions. He's saying that the road from Nairobi to Malaba does not have enough significance to make it a priority, economic and otherwise. So now we're talking about, he had told me, challenged me, that there's no time that there's ever traffic on that road. And I've given him a very basic example. We've seen shots after shots, videos, drone shots of traffic on that road on Fridays. So Continue.
Mjadala, please follow me. I specifically used Kisumu to Eldoret, and I said Kisumu to Kericho, and that was deliberate. I did not say Nairobi to Malaba. It is true we need expansion of that road, especially from Nairobi to Nakuru. But my question to you is, whenever such should become a priority over the section of the roads I mentioned earlier, when we make such roads, people will tell you, make the construction of the road from Malaba to Nairobi coming backwards. And that is where the priority becomes a problem. Because
all right,
when you don't do that, what they tell you is the people between the occupants of the area between Limuru and Naivasha or Nakuru are predominantly from this region. And that is where the problem is. And that's why I said all these priorities needs to be a subject of discussion in the national parliament, where budget allocation and appropriation is done with equal representation from the number of the, say, constituencies we have. But I also said the problem is these politicians, what they do, they prioritize other things over such issues. And I said further, I went further and I said, we also have what we have, one man, one shilling. Why does it become a pain? Why does it become a thorny issue to discuss in the parliament? Because it is about the issue, their distributions, because you need to take services, we need to take infrastructures where people are in terms of settlements. That's where now the priority comes in. When you bring such, it becomes a problem again.
All right, thank you. The host has raised his hand, and I think we need to move on. But thank you very much. One thing I want to tell you, Mofo, is that if you're a member of parliament thinking that just because things are discussed in parliament, at the end of it, you are in for a very rude shock. The government does control parliament. In fact, the president currently is controlling parliament. So hii kusema kwamba iliongelewa kwa parliament, null and void. Aya, ongea host.
Mofo, well, thank you for raising those up. Actually, I'm the one who is against the 1 shilling, 1 man thing because it's useless, one-sided, ignores so many other factors that are really guide allocation. We have debated that before, and I can highlight them without going into details. But let me address the one of the issue of the settlement and the carrying of goods and everything. The reason as to why we don't have that, I happen to come from the western side, so do I say, why we are actually saying that there's more economic significance on the Thika Road highway is because discriminately, the western side was not given the roads, and for that reason, we did not build these economic activities we are talking about, which would have had goods to bring to town. But because the central side has always had better roads, which have even spurred growth and coming up with many cities that when there's infrastructure like roads. That is why you are trying to say that there's economic activity and economic benefit. The reason why the sites we're talking about don't have is because they are being marginalized over the years. And therefore, any good road that we put there, we are going to have more cities coming up, more economic activities coming up and all that. But the moment we start arguing that way, then we want them to continue being marginalized. I do not want to go in that direction of that because then we don't want to lose Mujala's line. But anyway, I just got excited about that topic. But the 1 for 1 man, 1 shilling, or whatever, and 1 vote, please, that's a very bad argument. And I'm not the only one saying it. It's been discussed, including some people who have actually thought. Raila was among the people who are for it. But I think after some sense has been put into his head, I think he's reconsidering that thought. Reason is, if you go in that direction, then you ignore so many other things. I give it back to you, Mjadala, and please don't kick me out. I come in peace, you know me.
No, ni sawa kabisa. Kwanza ni space yako, unaweza kuongea anytime. I welcome anytime. But also, can you please remove Dolphin and then give her the chance again? Because she said a while ago that her mic is not working. It would be really nice to have her or a different voice also help us coordinate here. Thank you very much. Wanaume ambao mko kwa mic, najua nyinyi watu wazuri. Please let me give Aya Baby. Tusikie hata sauti nyororo ingine tofauti. Nyenyu ni mbaya. Aya Baby, hebu sema kitu hapa.
Sawa, acha basi ni break monotony. Mjadala. Okay, I hope mko poa though. Yani, I'm just coming after Dr. Mofo and the allegations and Nabamba. Anyway, I think it's good that Justice has just debunked whatever you see because yeah. Alafu by the way umetugaslight at some point, usikwange hivyo. Wacha tu ibaki Kasongo pekee ndo anaweza fanya story ya kugaslight watu. Huwezi tuambia barabara from Mombasa to Malaba it makes sense kudual, then the next minute unatuambia uliongelelea Kericho to sijui Eldoret. Hey bana, don't do that. Currently you are very fragile, especially psychologically. So when you do that to us, anyway, having said that, wacha nitoe I'll not get onto your case, Dr. Mofo. I think our watoto wameinua mikono, they just want to rebuttal you. And anyway, so personally, I think mambo ya, earlier on we spoke about mambo ya tribalism na vitu kaa hizo. And one thing I can say is, and I know Western had talked about mambo ya constitution and it being as good as the people who are implementing it. And that is why I think today where we are in the quagmire we are in. If you look at it, when the 2010 constitution came, it came in from the backdrop of the 207 PV and all that. And I think from the TJRC and some of those things they said, the reason why the country was so volatile was because watu walikuwa wameenda in the tribal alignments. There was a lot of power in the executive and they over like since kitambo, and that is what they were trying to get rid of, the fact that all the power was centralized on the executive. Now, ideally, when you listen or when you look at the 2010 constitution, yes, it's not perfect, but it's one of those like kind of good constitutions. It's actually good, even the way it was structured was very good because it was actually debunking a lot of these things. It was actually trying to get rid of this ideology of a tribe should decide, should be used to move things around the country, because it's true. The tribalism, okay, there's nothing wrong with your tribe, by the way. Like this, it's like your race and all those. When you go on a larger perspective, there's nothing wrong with all that. Like there's nothing wrong. If we say tribe is bad, then it means if you are Kikuyu, then, or if you are maybe Meru or Kalenjin or whatever, then it means it's a bad thing that you are a Kalenjin and now you should feel bad about it. It's not okay. Like there's nothing wrong with your tribe. What is wrong is now when you use it, give yourself unfair advantage or to unfairly disadvantage some other people. That's
Aya,
now
baby.
wrong. But yes.
Niliuliza swali about current politics, nikasema kwamba politics ya Gachagua sahi is very tribal. Comment on that, please.
Yeah. So you see now when we talk about, now I think you've just rejected when I was on the right point when I'm saying, well, there's nothing wrong with your tribe. There's something wrong when you use your tribe or your tribal affiliation to unfairly advantage or disadvantage some people. And that is what, in this case, Gachagua is doing, is actually unfairly, or is trying to push some unfair narrative about Kikuyu either being marginalized or Kikuyu being the ones who are, is it pushing, or they're the ones who are the entrepreneurs of the country, and he's using that, his tribal alignment to maybe get some sympathy and make people feel like they're being. I think someone told us, it's Western who told us, if you're not careful, you'll get a low self-esteem. I think he's trying to make them get the low self-esteem to some extent so that they retaliate. It's a mind game. That is what they're doing, and it's wrong. It's wrong by all means, and that is why someone also talked about the way it rubbed people badly in a wrong way when he even spoke that time during the inauguration, or is it called the swearing in, when they were being sworn in. Yeah, so it's wrong. I don't think there's anybody here today who can actually sit down and tell us what Gachagua is doing or the narrative that he's trying to push is the right one. Unfortunately, as it is, we are still, most of us who are adults, or rather the people when maybe they've been voting from 2022, even, okay, anybody who voted 2022 when I'm behind like that are people who have just grown up in the system of tribalism, like whereby everything is revolving around your tribe. So that is why you would understand why people still feel some kind of way when their tribe is mentioned, and that is what Gachagua is leveraging on the fact that he knows people still get emotional.
Asante sana.
Yeah.
Haya, baby pale anasema ya kwamba tribe ni sawa, shida ni weaponize jinsi ambavyo wanasiasa weaponize. Asanteni sana, tunaendelea mjadala hapa hivi kama jina langu linavyoandikwa hapo, Osama Lilian nilipopatia dem, kwa sababu yeye anasema ya kwamba wanaume lazima waongee tu. Sasa wanaongea wale wengine ambao hawajabeba mkono rich pia na kuona pale, nitakupatia baadaye kidogo. Osama, uko na 3 minutes kwa sababu naona watu wako na mioto sana. Tufanye 3 minutes each sasa, nitaangalia wakati nikifungua mic niongee kidogo juu wakati wako naisha. Osama, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mjadala Justice. I just want to pick from where hiyo mlikuwa mmefikia about that issue of I just want to comment kidogo about that issue of 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote. In my opinion, that is a very vague method that you can use to argue about distribution of resources in this country. You know, there is a difference between equity and between equality and equity. For example, tukiongelea about equity, tukiongelea about equality, if 3 people are standing on a fence and they want to watch a football match on the other side of the fence, you give all of them 3 crates to stand on those crates so that they can watch that match. One person is 2 meters tall, the other person is 1.5 meters tall, while the other person is a dwarf who is barely 1 meter tall. You give all of them crates, that is equality. You give them equal, for example, 3 crates of soda, hizi tu za kawaida. That is equality, distribution of resources. But again, this person who is 2 meters tall, now when we talk about we talk about equity, we mean that this person who is 2 meters tall can still see the match even without standing on that fence. The other person who is 1.5 meters tall anaweza ona pia kidogo even without standing on that crate, but the dwarf cannot see totally. So when we talk about equity, the other person should be considerate enough to know that who needs more, so that distribution can favor everybody, so that the point is everybody should watch the match. So when we talk about 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote, that is a vague and outdated statement and a kind of argument that should not be used. Number 2, I wanted to comment about that issue of ethnicity in this country, especially vile mjadala you had said about Rigathi Gachagua and his shenanigans. I think Rigathi Gachagua, whatever he's doing, he has elevated the level of ethnicity he has elevated that level to dangerous levels. You know, everybody has been doing ethnic mobilization, but too much of something is always poisonous. We cannot say that Raila has never talked anything to do with the Luos, or Ruto has never talked anything to do with the Kalenjin people, or even Matiang'i with the Kisii people, but they are not doing at the level at which Rigathi Gachagua is doing. When you do something, too much of it becomes dangerous and poisonous. And now it is getting to that level where it is becoming toxic. That is why, even if you talk with the majority of the people from Mount Kenya, waulize, is Gachagua fit to be president in this country? They will tell you plainly that no, he is not fit to be president in this country, because they know that whatever he is doing is good. But again, it is not the best thing to do. You cannot exclude you cannot, yani, take advantage of you being superior and now make other people look inferior. Now, that is my argument concerning that. And now, since time is out, let me wind up on that. Let me wait again another
Asante,
time.
in
Thank
fact,
you.
I want to give you 40 more seconds, and I want to ask you this question. Can you please use your 40 seconds to apply the equality and equity analogy yenye umetupatia to hii story ya tribalism? Then how would you make sure that hiyo mambo imekuwa applied hapa? Osama, 40 seconds.
Okay, thank you. I think there is somebody who was here on the speakers before he left, and they said that when he was growing up, he never saw from Kuria. He's a Kuria. He never saw electricity, but on the other side of Tanzania there was electricity, and on the other side of Migori, on the Luo side now there was also electricity. Now, for me, if we can apply that concept of equity and equality, the distribution of resources inakuwa, you see when that resources it comes from the national government, they distribute it equally. But again, is it enough? Is it enough to help those people see the match? Now the match which I'm speaking in quotes, to get that for example, kama ni hiyo stima yenye walikuwa wanasema, because they said the first time they saw electricity was in 2008. Now my point is, if that concept of equity was applied from then these people hawangekuwa kwa hiyo shida yenye walikuwa wanajipata nayo.
Okay, very, very much. Thank you very much. And your other concept would mean then that the communities that have been left behind for a long time, wale wenye ni dwarf vile ulikuwa unasema, should be given a little more than wenye wamekuwa kipewa mingi, si ndio?
Yes.
Very good, very good. That's a very good analogy, and thank you so much for your patience, and thank you also for letting Aya Baby go ahead of you. You are such a gentleman. Ndio maana tumepewa 40 more seconds. Aya, Red Hand, sema kitu.
Hello, yes.
Mambo,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, nakusikia.
Poa sana. Thank you very much for hosting me today. I have listened to some submissions, and I'd first like to talk about tribalism with the time that I have. I think we are being very disingenuous with ourselves, focusing on tribalism only nationally. The reason I say this is because we are talking as people we're talking like the people of Israel and Iraq and other places who saw that America won a war through dropping a nuclear bomb, and the other countries spent decades building nuclear weapons, and then when they were done, they were told that we are no longer using nuclear weapons. The reason I'm relating it to that is because devolution came, and if you go to those devolved units, you will find, like if you go to Nyamira, the people of Nyamira will never vote for a Luo as governor. Yet there are Luos who have lived in Nyamira since 1963. If you go to Wasingishu, you will find maybe that a Kipsigis or a Nandi cannot become governor. That they are all Kalenjin when it comes to national politics. But when it comes to county politics, it is your sub-tribe. If you go to Kisumu, a Kisii will never be governor of Kisumu. The Kisii may have lived there for hundreds, even the people of Mount Kenya who call themselves Mount Kenya or Giama. A Kikuyu can never be governor in Embu or senator. And in Meru, an Embu can never be governor or senator. So let us also be honest with ourselves and look in the mirror.
Red Hand, as you proceed, I don't want to take your time, but I just want to tell you that when Chacha presented, I think you had not come in. He presented exactly the same point you're saying. So you calling us that we are not being genuine. That point had already been advanced, that indeed those things happen, that you can't be an MP here, and he give examples from Migori and Northeastern. So that point had already been put across, just to be clear.
Okay.
Yeah, proceed.
Okay.
So
okay,
we are not really not being dishonest here.
Okay, Chacha is being generous. That is what I'll say. Secondly, I want to talk about, because as we are talking about how ethnic politics is holding Kenya hostage, we are really talking about power and resources. We're not talking about anything else. That's what we are thinking about, really. And from what I've gathered is that Kenyans have still grown up with the belief that tenders are your fastest way of becoming a billionaire. This is why when we're talking, we're discussing politics in terms of who gets what from the national cake. Right? In places like the United States of America, there are multiple races. As a matter of fact, the Latino American population is the second largest population. But they've never had a president. And you will never hear them complaining, oh, why have there been 45 white presidents and one black president? But us, we are not presidents. Why are all these cabinet ministers white and some black? Where are us Latinos? Even in the states, in the actual states, you will find that it is the white ones who are governors and senators, majority. But you will never find these races coming and complaining that General Electric, owned by a white man, has been given a tender, or Amazon, or Apple, or even this BlackRock, or even the tenders given to the military. And even when we talk about democracy, that is a country that we all look to. But when we come here back into Kenya, we are thinking about tribes. For me, it wouldn't even matter to me if all cabinet secretaries, president, deputy president, and PSs were Luo and Luya only. As long as the work is being done. As long as the work is being done. Okay. So that is basically what I'm
sorry,
talking
Mjadala,
about.
I keep intervening because I think I find that interesting, because that's the same question that Western had addressed, saying that actually that's not even accurate, because you can't go to an office and find only Kikuyus, only Luos, or whatever being there, because then you are not accommodating the resource that you have in a society that is multi-ethnic and multicultural and all that. So that statement by itself is the one that a question had been asked by Japonji, that as long as the services are being offered, then I don't care what happens, who holds that office. And I think that was debunked based on how do you reflect the face of the nation that you are leading, because it's not about just the resources and the services, but it's also the cohesion, the kind of cohesion that you want to bring into the society. And the case in point that you raised about the US, Dr. Mofoide explained a little bit about Canada and in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which, by the way, I had a chance of serving as a diversity, equity, and inclusion person for 3 years. My last conference was in Austin last year. And one of the issues that is very clear is that the government you are referring to, the United States, has done enormous job to ensure that there even a small business association that takes care of minorities, whether you are Latino or African American, or these women-owned businesses, there are things like that. So those mechanisms are in place. As much as it doesn't come out in the open, it's not a society that does not address those issues of discrimination based on gender, based on race, based on those things. And therefore, when you're addressing the tribalism and the discrimination that comes in a society within tribalism, that has to be taken seriously, because even the societies that are progressive, they have to address the issue of diversity in terms of race, in terms of all these other factors. And of course, in our case is tribe and obviously gender. And of course, we're going to talk about maybe age at another point. So, but anyway, I do appreciate your submission, but I probably disagree with the point that we can only have president law, deputy president law. It won't even work. It doesn't even look good. What about the other people? Are they not qualified? That's what I would say. But yeah,
For
over
me,
to you.
the
Well,
reason I'm
maybe
saying that
30 seconds on that. Yeah.
the reason I'm saying that is because there are only 1,883 elected positions in this country. Even if all those elected positions, we all sat down together and decided how we're going to divide all this so that everyone is accommodated, there will still be 50 million Kenyans left out there.
No,
So
you see, now that's where you're going wrong. We are not accommodating 50 million people. That's not even practical. I don't want to go that. I don't want to to go into that discussion about that direction.
Yeah,
We are talking about a balance, because if we start
In-
talking about accommodating everybody, then we are losing the point that we are making.
In fact, I want to summarize what Red Pill is saying so that he can use his 1 minute so we move on. I think what he's trying to say, yes, he's used the word about if it was all Luos or whatever. His point is that if the system is working, so continue from there. If the system is working, that's what you care about.
Yes. The reason I'm also saying that is because there are Asians who have lived in this country since independence. I've never seen an Asian minister in this government. And
But you see, Red Pill. Before you got here, when I was opening the discussion, I said that let's try to be better debaters. If we want this discussion to be exciting, you've said that almost the whole 3 minutes. So can you say something else with your 1 minute or give back the 1 minute?
You can take it back.
But thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right. So Mutai, fungua mic. Mutai.
Yeah, hello.
Nikikuita usiseme ati hello. Sema yes, how are you? Mutai, let's try this again. Mutai.
Okay, let's try it again.
Do you know who Hulk Hogan is?
Who?
Hulk Hogan is.
No, I don't know. Who is that?
He's dead. So wewe ni Gen Z. Nilikuwa nakupima kwa sababu wewe ni Gen Z. Wewe hujui hata Big Boss Man na hujui hata Tatanka. Anyway, I want to give this to you. It's been a fantastic discussion. I was just using that as intermission. I want you to give these folks, in fact, there's some people we've not heard from. Walikuja hapo wakakaa, sijui sasa kama kuna submission banning or not. But I think Wanda, Western, and then you can give to Rich, Ruda, the people that we've not heard from Kiasi. Asante sana, Mutai, welcome.
Okay, asante sana mjadala, asante sana Justice ambaye ni mwenyeji wa hii space na mwenyeji mwanzo wake mjadala kwa kazi ambayo umefanya. Nimekuja tu kushow off ile Kiswahili ambayo nimejifunza leo na najua tunazungumzia kuhusu makabila, lakini hata hivyo si makabila haswa, lakini ubaguzi katika ukabila. Na ningependa labda ruhusu Wanda aweze kutuambia jambo kisha nitapatia Western. Wanda, habari?
Nzuri sana. You know, Mtai is tempting me to use Swahili. Na sasa nikitumia Swahili nitaambiwa sijui mimi ninazungumza Kiswahili cha dunia gani, wengine wamekataa kuelewa. So allow me to stick na hii lugha ambayo mjadala ataelewa ili asije akanilenga mawe hapa. I'll mention a few things. I had someone talking of a certain road not being as important as the other one because either there is an imagination that that region is either lesser populated or it doesn't have whatever probably may be needed to be transported from point A to point B, or probably that region is a bit bushy, but it's still a bushy area. An area becomes important when you serve it with factors that will make it important. An area becomes populated when you provide it with necessary services and factors. Some regions that we are today looking at them as developed areas, they were bushy with no one even wanting to buy a parcel of land in those areas. And if you listen to stories, people will tell you people are being given tracts of land in those areas at a throwaway price. And at some point, unaambiwa kuja tu chukue, come and stay here. And the reason was those areas were still bushy. But the moment roads were constructed, tarmac roads were provided in those areas, power supply was provided in those areas, people slowly started walking into those areas, investing in those areas. Then within no time, those areas became developed. Now look at how that area has developed. Then look at how an area is defined as marginalized. An area becomes marginalized because it lacks roads. An area becomes marginalized because it lacks schools, it lacks hospitals, and such kind. We have so many marginalized areas in Kenya. And to me, our systems have made those areas marginalized. If I'm told we have developed a city and today it's so important, it's lucrative, commercialized, businesses, transactions are taking place, there is life in those areas, then why not do away with this marginalization, get proper infrastructures in those areas, get them roads, get them schools, get them a proper transport. To me, you will see an all-round development. And therefore, an imagination that a certain road is not important as compared to the road A is important as compared to road B, it's just leading, or it's in one way promoting unbalanced economic growth cut across. And this is a narrative that some of our politicians have wanted to propel. And they have propelled it with trying to bring the one man, one vote, one shilling idea. You try and do that today, then believe me, no, you will never see Lamu grow. All the potentials in Lamu will never be felt. They will never be realized. You'll never see Turkana develop. You'll never see areas like Garissa or Wajir, areas like Baringo, in those areas, such areas growing. Our politicians have for so many years, even if it is silently, but by the nature of presidential elections that are tribal, that allows a certain region to be considered more important than other regions, have for so many years promoted this imbalanced kind of growth, only that they want to legalize the one man, one vote, one shilling. But in actual sense, by the fact that we have a marginalized region and another region as an advantageous region, then it is a silent one man, one vote, one shilling. Because the reason why those other areas are not developed is because they are lesser populated, they have zero bargaining power. And because they have zero bargaining power, then let us not get them these infrastructures, let's define them as marginalized. As I yield, we can change quite a number and transform the country and run away from the ethnic politics that is holding us back in the sense of when it comes to development. If we start looking into how different we are as a people, but how important it is to develop the whole country. If we start forming political parties, then in this political party, its constitution and its structure, the framework cut across from the word go, that you don't join a political party as a member and give it more power financially, but instead you look at its formation from its formation. The moment you realize that the leaderships of top positions during the sit down in its formation, there is a kingpin from a certain community, then run away. That is a tribal party. Today, DCP is a tribal party. There is no way you will tell someone that DCP is a national party. It is a tribal party. Then look at how it's formed. A kingpin who is believed to be a kingpin from a region brings some of his friends close to him and tell them, let us come up with a political party. That party is a car, it's a vehicle that belongs to that person. And because this person is a tribal king, then that is a tribal party. But if individuals will come together from different communities, look at how in 2002, the Rainbow Coalition, whatever, came into being. We had different faces. Michael Malwa came in, I don't know, Ngilu was involved, Kibaki was involved. Then look at those teams and look at what 2002, look at the election, the development after 2002. Only that Kibaki at some point lost it. After 2005, this guy Michuki made him realize that, oh no, we come from this region. You need to start preparing your inheritor. Whoever that will reign, will take over from you. Then that's when things start. The rain started beating us again. Kibaki had a chance to do away with tribal politics, but he allowed those that probably were perceived as the Mount Kenya mafias to bring back tribalism in the name of trying to protect or trying to ensure that presidency remains in the region. Therefore, let us start looking into development of our politics from party formations. Look at the members that are forming this party, the leadership structures. Then look at the national politics now in this case. Look at the persons surrounding this candidate that you want to call the president. If the kitchen party will be members of a certain community, then you're still losing it. But if you realize the assembling of a team will have the kitchen party that is cut across, then you win. As earlier said, tribalism in Kenya, it's not colonial, it is pre-colonial. And because this is a history problem, as I learned, because this is a history problem, we can only face it by agreeing that it's a problem that we have and it has been used to kill us for so many years. So let us face it, but different angles. Mutai.
Thank you very much, Wanda. But I hope that you do realize that you've landed twice, actually, which is a good thing. Thank you very much. Your talk was very insightful, and you've mentioned about equal access to resources and all that. But I want Weston to come in, and then Ruda. Weston, good evening.
Good evening, Mutai. Hi.
Hi, how are you doing today?
Cool, I'm doing well. Thank you.
Okay. Allow me to usher you in with a question. Wanda has explained about how unequal access to resources makes people want to, go into those tribal cocoons for security and all that. I want you to maybe perhaps discuss it based on the contemporary issues or triggers that we are currently seeing. We see that people who have, let's even talk about water. People who don't access water, they come in, become a community, and then they say that we've been marginalized and all that. Can you maybe provide, say, a psychological anatomy of the whole thing? How does it happen? How does it happen from, say, umekatazwa kitu to being now a tribal cocoon? Can you maybe discuss that? And I'm only giving you 4 minutes. Weston?
Mtaru, one thing you have to appreciate is this. If you read literature on ethnicity, because even those English people in the United Kingdom, that's an ethnic group. They're distinct from the Welsh and the Scots. Those are ethnic groups. As I think Church was putting it, in this other part of the world, we use tribe, which is pejorative, uncivilized people, atavistic, but ethnicity is global, is universal. And therefore, if a group of people feels discriminated against, because power, politics, simply defined means who gets what, when, and how, as according to Laswell. Basically, resources, that's what it means. And in our case in Kenya, power has been exercised along the ethnic axis. Fact. So if you are not in close proximity to power, or if your core ethnic is not in power, chances are very high that you lose out in perpetuity. And therefore, people recede into ethnic groups to make claims on the state. And that's why the state is not working, because it has to compete to strive to address what we call sectarian interests. These ethnic delegations that go to State House, making claims and what have you, they're not irrational. They look irrational and barbaric. But I'm saying, if you tie ethnic politics with power and resources, it makes sense. Therefore, it's actually legitimate for people to make claims on the state on the basis of ethnicity. If it's on that basis that they've been discriminated against, it's legitimate. Because if you don't speak for yourselves, who is going to speak for you? No one will speak for you. So if you make it state policy to discriminate against certain people, they'll be shocked that they recede into ethnic enclaves, vote along those lines, and make claims along those lines. They're responding in measure. So if you want people to be detribalized, if you are exercising executive power, exercise it even-handedly across the board. And our constitution is crystal clear about that. Affirmative action, it's only in Kenya where we think it doesn't matter. It matters. Because even in the US has not been a democracy for many years. Jim Crow laws, the last vestiges of Jim Crow laws were repealed in the 60s when African countries got independence. So the US has not been a democracy for many years. It is just a young democracy like we are. Black people didn't belong in the US for many years until the other day. 60s is not too long ago. And therefore, there's something called affirmative action. And why is affirmative action significant? It's significant because it's not just the responsibility of the state to undertake this thing I call the nation building project. Every other entity, companies and business people are supposed to carry their weight. And therefore, in some jurisdictions with divisions the way we do, US, South Africa, name it, if you're a company and you just hire people from your own ethnic group because it's your company, it's your capital, the state will dissuade you against doing that. You are not going to benefit from tax incentives, for instance. If you're an NGO, for instance, you will be taxed heavily than another company that has got the face of Kenya, which is participating in nation building projects. So you have to be punished until you reach a point and say, no, it's hurting me. It's hurting my business. So you have to file reports on diversity targets in your company. How are you helping the state to ensure that every other Kenyan, every other American, every other South African feels part and parcel of this mainstream economy? So you can't just argue that this is my money, I set up this company. No, the state will say, okay, you can go ahead. But we'll come up with vicious policies against people like you. So when Mofo talks about Mombasa Road, Mombasa, Nairobi, Malaba Road could not be a priority because it's insignificant. What Mofo is saying that people who live in that part of the country are insignificant. Because, listen, a road is meant to ensure that there's efficient, quick movement of goods, people, services. So are there people who travel from Nairobi or Mombasa to the western part of the country? Yes. Oh, they travel to do what? To go and climb trees? That's not an economic activity. Do we have trucks along that road from Mombasa to Malaba? And what do they do, those trucks? Do they carry human waste from Mombasa to Burundi or to Rwanda? That's an economic activity. So when you say that road cannot be a priority because there's no economic activity, what Dr. Mofo is saying is actually echoing Rigathi, that the people who reside in that part of the country are economically insignificant as far as the development of Kenya is concerned. That's what it means. I hope you're listening to him. How can you say something like that? So people who reside in that part of the country, like they don't matter, they don't work. There's no economic activity there. There's no fishing there. There's no sugar growing there. There's no maize growing there. Oh, really? Like, what kind of talk is this? Let me tell you this. Let me remind you. If you read the manifesto, what's happening? Somebody is interfering.
I hope that you'll be landing on that note.
There's interference in the background. I don't know what's happening.
Okay.
Let
but are you 1 minute? Okay.
Okay. Let me land on this note. So what I'm saying is that people like Rigathi are ingrates. They're ingrates. You know why they're ingrates? They're ingrates because You deny that you have had privileges before, courtesy of other Kenyans. Rigathi denies that he's had privileges courtesy of his association with Daniel Moi. But when he speaks, he will speak so pejoratively about Moi. But he's a product of Moi. So it means if Rigathi forms a party and you join that party as a Kisi, as a Luo, as a Turkana, as a Maasai, as a Luya, if he was to get into power, God forbid, he will dismiss you. I can guarantee you. So if you're not listening to him, I can put it to you. He's going to dismiss you. That you don't matter, you are useless, you are just escorting him on his way to power. You must go back to your place. You don't belong in this country, you are economically insignificant. And therefore, I'm finding this discussion extremely problematic. And thank God, Dr. Murphy is consistent from yesterday saying that the people who joined the government, courtesy of Uhuru Kenyatta, no, that is not the case. And today saying that we can't prioritize this road, the main artery, transport artery in Kenya, because it's insignificant, when actually it's there for all and sundry to see that this is the economic mainstay of the country as far as transportation is concerned. So for people who reside in that country, to do all this road, you must have one of your own in president. That's the point. If you want this road to be dualed, you must have one of your own as a president. If you don't, they are not going to prioritize it. But NAC, as I yield Mutai, when NAC was campaigning, go and read their manifesto if you can access it. When they're campaigning towards 2002 elections, one of their planks in the campaign manifesto was infrastructure. And the infrastructure referred to Mombasa, Nairobi, Malaba highway to modernize and dual it. When they got into power, Kibaki came up with Thika Road. And the problems began there. And there's the problems that continue to haunt us as we speak now. So I'm glad we're having a discussion on these issues. But I hope we're having a discussion with an open mind. That we don't live in this bubble that we are this united country, we are not into tribes. I hope we're listening how Kenyans are speaking about fellow Kenyans. So that when you vote tomorrow as a Kenyan and somebody else votes as an ethnic supremacist, I can guarantee you who is voting as a Kenyan will lose out. I yield.
Okay, thank you very much, Vesta. I'll be inviting Ruda, and then after Ruda will be Sam, and then Academia. Ruda, hello, how are you today?
Fine, thank you.
I know often when we talk about tribalism, we tend to talk about its demerits. And yes, you and I have suffered from people being tribal. But according to you, what do you think are the merits of tribalism? And after a certain group being identified as a tribal group because they're benefiting a lot, what do you think? These people who are now in this group of called tribal go through? I mean, what is the perception of the other people who feel marginalized towards the people who are given all? Ruta.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank the Almighty God for giving us this opportunity to come here and debate the issues that are affecting us. I also want to thank Justice for holding this space and the co-host, plus the listeners and the speakers. Above all, I want to thank the President for leading this country. And today, he launched a world peace, migration, and soon, in 1 week or two, it's going to. In 1 week or two, the Office of Migration is going to be set in Masai Mara, which will give youth some employment. And this is the development Wanda is talking about, taking development to the locals. Now, he has also promised that in 1 week or two, he's going to launch the fossil remains of the first man on Earth. So we are waiting. Yes, how ethnic politics is holding Kenya hostage. It's a wonderful topic, but there's something, since we started this Mjadala, there's something Wanda said. And I asked him a question. Do you think there are regions which are marginalized? And he said yes. For me, with the new constitution, I don't think there are regions which are marginalized because I've been working in Mandera, Wajir, Garissa, Turkana. I've gone all those places. But what happened mostly, people who are elected in these places, they move those resources that have been given to come and develop, they move it back to Nairobi. If you go places like Northeastern, that is the case. They don't want to develop their place, they take it back to the areas which they feel that they are comfortable. While there's especially where I worked for so long, somebody was given a contract of building these boreholes across the community. In Northeastern, there's a large land, there's a lot of tracts of land. And the person decided to chimba kisima where there's no water so that somebody else will come to be given that contract again. You wonder what is happening with these people. Now, let me go with the topic of today, how ethnic politics is holding Kenya hostage. In fact, before I come to Mutai's question, these politicians have found a way of eroding the national unity that we are supposed to enjoy. How do they do that? They come with verses like us versus them. Citizens are more identified with their tribe than with the country. You see, when somebody tells you you are this and you are this, like the way Gachagua is doing. So he's telling the Mount Kenya people to be identified by the tribe, but not the country. This will foster most of this is called mistrust between communities. We start becoming suspicious of each other. Mimi tukiwa shuleni tukiendelea kusoma kutoka university, primary, secondary, we coexisted with these guys from different groups, from different tribes. We never saw tribe in between us. But when we came out, is when that thing became very common. And it's entrenched in our communities in the sense that uprooting it is really something has to be done. Number two, this tribalism and ethnicity, it promotes mediocrity and patronage. In essence, you find people who have merit, people who are efficient in government jobs, they are not given the opportunity. Parliament is inclined to a certain region. Even if one ethnic group takes all the jobs, they don't care because mtu wetu ako huko juu. Unaona? Resources, patronage network, resources are not generally to our people, not where they are most needed. Unapata mtu anaenda kujenga kitu sijui ni wapi, lakini mahali hakitakikani. It triggers electoral violence. Mimi nime experience electoral violence, something I'll never talk about. Mimi have, by the way, vile niko hivi, niligongwa mshale moja kwa mguu, ingine kwa kichwa, because of ethnic clashes, which were initiated by a politician. So, economic disruption brought about electoral violence is a very bad thing which is triggered by these politicians, and that is how they destroy the economy. Then they come to tell us a certain region is well developed, another one is not well developed. The other thing that this politician uses ethnicity to divide us is unfair resource allocation. That's why what I was talking about, marginalized of certain region, poor infrastructure, like Dr. Mofo is talking, in other region and others, some Dr. Mofo thinks that places zingine zinastahili kuwa na hiki na hizi, lakini it's good in this space when somebody says something which is incorrect, somebody is able to bring sense and debunk that statement, and that is how we grow and learn from each other. Undermines this thing, all these things undermines the democratic values. You see, our parties are made of tribal kingdom. Justice was saying about Kisii, where Raila said that the Kisii have no voting what?
Yeah.
They
A
ca-
quick one road on that without losing your train of thought. I did check, and Western and academia were right. I'm the one who was wrong on that one. Actually, the way Western put it, it was correct. That's how Raila put it. It was more of like you can't win by yourself. So
by
on that one, I
yourself.
misled.
Yeah.
I misled the team on that one. I really apologize on that.
Okay,
I need to go
no
back.
problem. I was not dwelling on your point. I
Let's
was just
no.
yes.
Ruda, let's use this as a case example. Host Fungo Mike, where are you from?
Rift
Okay.
Valley.
No,
No.
wait, Ruda, you'll get 1 more minute. Don't worry. Where are you from, Justice?
From Nyanza.
I'm
Nyanza.
from
No, not you, Ruda. I'm asking the
okay.
host, Nyanza.
Mhm.
So does Matiangi speak a language that your grandmother speaks?
Yes.
So you are blindly biased. Ulisikia tu moto badala kusikia chenye Raila alisema, ulisikia bias.
I have to take back the phrase I used. I actually listened to. No. Let me be clear on this one. Which I'm not trying to run away from the responsibility. I did listen to the second person who actually interpreted the message, and that's why academia was saying that when somebody picked up that word, and that was Senator Onyonka, and even brought it in. There's a newspaper that wrote. I read a newspaper. When I went back to the exact word Raila used, I was like, oh, I got biased. Number one, I agree with you. I admit that was biased based on the tribe. But number two, I should have done my due diligence to verify that information instead of, especially saying it publicly here, especially in this space, that I knew Raila said this. No, that was completely wrong of me to say that Raila said it. He never said it. Yeah.
Look at our host. Asante sasa unaweza kufunga. Haya, cricket man maliza bwana. Uko na 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. So another one is I was saying about this undermining democratic values, where parties are not ideological, but are put in place to propel our man, and that is not a good way to go. Accountability is very weak, because if you elect somebody you favor, that person to be accountable is not possible, because you have a favor towards that person. You cannot question that person, because it's the one who has propelled you to that level where you are. And the last one, it hinders long-term policy and development. So we don't get the best visionary leaders. National projects become political battlegrounds. Development agendas change with regimes. You see, if the projects which were started by Uhuru will not be completed because Uhuru came from Mount Kenya. Now, Ruto has come in and started his own projects, which maybe the next regime which will be coming will not complete. And that is how we waste we in the long-term policy and the development. And this is how our people, the nation, misses unemployment opportunities. And
Thank you very much, Ruda.
Yes.
30 seconds.
Okay. And it breeds also corruption. So in conclusion, let me say that ethnic politics is a Kenya silent cancer. It's deeply embedded, emotionally charged, and politically manipulated. It limits progress and poisons democracy. And I can say that it is still innovation, especially right now. Most youths are very innovative, but given that opportunity of innovation, it's not there. So until Kenyans rise above the tribal and embrace issue-based meritocratic politics, the dream of united, prosperous Kenya will just remain a dream. That's all I can say about now. Thank you.
Mutai,
Yes.
umesikia vile huyu mtu ameongea. Ruda uko na LinkedIn? Ruda,
Atume hapo chini.
Ruda uko na LinkedIn?
Ring chain.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, no. I don't know what's that.
Si LinkedIn. Nasema tu fanya hivi vile umeongea vizuri sana, umepanga maneno vizuri sana. Enda uandike hiyo kitu mahali, andike kwa status yako ama uandike kwa wall ya Justice umtag. because you really said it nicely and really even given your thoughts in terms of the effects nini na ukasummarize vizuri na in conclusion unaongea vizuri sana, so nilikuwa nataka kupata tu flowers zako. Asante sana.
Thank you.
All right, looks like the co-hosts have taken a short break. But Karibun, thank you for that. And the I know we are going to academia and then Dr. Mofo as we advance the conversation. Yeah, the issue of tribe and tribalism. Tribalism ni mbaya, because then what you do is that you owe allegiance to your tribe at the expense of others, and especially which costs nation building and of course the cohesion, the unity of the people. But
Can I ask you a question, host?
Oh yeah.
Usiogope, itakuwa ni swali mzuri.
I'm actually scared of you.
Yeah, bana. In your life, I want to extrapolate something. In your life, let's say you are talking to a girl or a woman you like. Did you ever think huyu na hii lugha anaongea nyanya yangu utamsikia kweli? And did that affect your choice of who you're going to be friends with ama kudate?
No, in our place, yes, I was scared because my eldest brother married a Kikuyu, and then they used to call Kikuyus weeds, like ibinyambi, meaning like the things that are not supposed to grow among the things you plant. So we were very scared because of how they were talking very bad about my sister-in-law. And then when I grew up going somewhere, I guess two of my brothers had already crossed over. But when I went to a different race, it got worse because I came to realize that, number one, yes, I think I was open, but I didn't realize that my people, among them that I'm going to live, they're not open in embracing that. So I became so conscious that every time I'm making a decision, I think through to the end, how is this going to affect? How is this going to look? How is this going to do this? So that consciousness has been built in me based on experience and the things I've had around me. But
that is very, very good. You answered that and used an example of what your people use to refer to Kikuyus. Because I think that in this discussion, we're going to the next level here as we give Mutai back, is we need to again identify some of those phrases that we use to other groups. For example, when Raila lost the AU seat, even anytime Raila loses or anytime Raila says something that people don't like, what do they default to? Huyu jamaa hajakatwa. Hawa jamaa wakatwagwi. So that narrative, even us as we speak in this group, we have to start mentioning it so that tujue urafiki yako fulani, host fulani, co-host fulani, aseme vitu kama hizo unamkata za abadan katana, unamwambia vitu kama hizo hatuwezi sema.
You know, the Kisis hated Luo so bad that I remember, sorry, this is going to be my last example, and it's the Kisis hated Luo so bad, and we used to be warned not even to interact, and yet my boundary, like our home, the little boundary is this side Nisisi, the other side the Luo. So growing up, we were told not even to give them maji, even water. And it was so embedded in us that we created names and everything. And those of you who don't know a little bit of the history of that side of the border, until Raila came in, then we broke loose. In fact, we became one much later. But before, there was a fight that was so bad that we couldn't even eat together. And we're not that old in terms, this is a recent thing we're talking about. So this thing has gone on so much that even during the voting, I could hear, there are not many cases, so I couldn't say it. But it would be said in such a derogatory way that you just feel bad. Alafu, if you try to do something and I'm interacting with my friends who are the Luos, people would think they are not. So they would start talking about that, oh, I'm glad your friends are not Luos. And these are my friends are Luos. So they're like trying to, and then when I tell them they are, and they're like, oh, okay, it's okay. Maybe there are those Luos who are good. Can you imagine that kind of language? Like they try to make it look like the ones you're interacting with are good, so the rest of them are bad. So I've had to deal with that, and that's why, for me, Ukabila ni ujinga. I cannot even go with any of those people try to advance this tribalism and all that. Please, hapo nilihama kitambo vile nitoka Misri.
Thank you for likening Ukabila na Misri. Ruda actually talked about him being a survivor. I'm not sure whether it was a 2 or 7 PV, but allow me now to tell you about my story in 2007. I was just a 7-year-old Chile, and I was 6-year-old. Yeah, and I didn't really understand the happenings. I wasn't even aware of what was happening. And my hometown is near Chebilat, and Chebilat is where the Kipsigis and the Kisis meet. Yeah, Kisses from Nyamira. And I do remember this one night when my dad came back home from work. I wonder why he was going to work and the people are fighting. So he came back one night and then he told us, can you please wake up? So we woke up and we followed him outside and he told us, there's something I want to show you. I don't know why he wanted to show us, but I'm just coming to realize that perhaps he wanted us to see what humanity can do to its own self. And there was this really big fire blazing at the horizon. Imagine it was actually lighting the door to our home, and yet it is kilometers far, far, far away. So last year, no, not last year, in 2022, I did meet a friend who is a Kisi. And last year I did meet another friend who was also a Kisi, and both of them do have scars. I'm sorry that I have to share their story, and both of them have scars from the post-election violence. And I was telling them that perhaps I've been very much insensitive because sometimes, you know, that thing when you're just sitting with your friends and unaanza kuwachokoza, nyi wa Kisii nini, you know, that kind of thing. So I realized that I'd been very insensitive given that I didn't know their story. But being me, I told myself that it is very wrong for me to maybe be biased or stereotypic towards them, if I don't know their story. And Ruda, I can't really say that I'm sorry that happened, but I do feel you. And I've always wanted to engage more with people so that I can get to not really understand, but rather try to practice an emphatic way to show that it is really bad to be a tribal person. Mjadala, can I ask you a question?
Yeah. Now go ahead.
Okay, I don't know what tribe you belong to, but have you ever benefited from belonging to that tribe?
No, actually, no. I've never been discriminated against based on my tribe. Or if it happened, and it was not brought to my knowledge, I would say. I've lived in both the rural and also cosmopolitan or areas in Kenya, and so I've not experienced it straight on. But then that is also maybe a part about my personality too. Nikika na wewe na wewe ni lugha nyingine, I'll not let you, especially when we're just having vibes, you have one on me, because I'll also have something say that's meaner than you even imagine, right? But also people just don't play with me because I have a presence about me in person that I don't think many people, even if they're from Kisi or whatever the tribe they're from, they would attend that. So again, maybe it's been done in terms of job appointment, internships, and things like that. They saw my last name, but I wouldn't say that I've experienced it firsthand, like you said, Mutai.
Okay, thank you. The reason why I asked you that is because I was just wondering whether there are some passive privileges that we do get from belonging to a certain community. Myself, I'm a Kipsigis, and during Moi's time, there were a lot of schools that were being built in the Kipsigis area. And I suppose I've enjoyed education in grade schools that were actually sponsored by Moi and his cronies. And I don't know whether that's a privilege of belonging to Kipsigis, or is it just that the area developed just like that? I don't know. Myself, being old, I've not benefited from being a Kipsigis. And when people say that Kipsigis are tribal or the Kalenjins are tribal, I feel disconnected a little bit because I don't see how that is happening, especially at a personal level. But at a community level, yes. It's tribal.
And I'm glad you said the last thing. And again, I think we should punt this to the panelists here. I'm glad you said the last thing because most cases, most of these isms don't have to be manifested at the personal level because most of these things are structural. Anytime we talk about something that is power-based, that discriminates people against others, you have to think about it from a power perspective, from a structure perspective. Because ukileta all the way down to mimi sijaona ni kama nimekuwa discriminatory against other tribes as a Kalenjin, then the other 99% of your people have, or the systems made it easy for your people to benefit over the other. So you ask about privilege and discrimination, then yes. I like that one thing Mofo has been emphasizing, which is true and cuts across all the debates that we're having today, is this issue of power, right? People use and weaponize their ethnicity because they want to exercise power over others, or they want to use the structures to benefit from those powerful situations. Asante sana Mutai. Now, the panelists, karibuni tena. Welcome back. We've ended the podcast. Mutai, malizia kazi yako.
Zizi, unajua, okay. I wanted some before academia, but some had dropped a little bit, so I brought academia and then some. Academia and then some, okay. And academia, you only have 4 minutes, and then some will come in. Academia, please tell us your account, and maybe something, any other submission on the topic. Academia?
Give some first. I'm doing something. I'll come later on.
Okay. Thank you. Some 4 minutes have been donated to you, so you have 6 minutes. 4 yours and 2 his.
Ni nini aiendi hivyo? Bado kona 4 minutes hapa. Wewe ni nini? Rudi class. Uko na 4 minutes Sam.
Hapana, Sam ako na 6, nimeongezea 2.
Hii mnajuana. Kwani yeye ni
Yeah,
mkipfigures?
I think I'll come back later. I'm on the road. Just a few minutes.
Look at God. Look at God.
Go. Go to Dr. Moff, I think.
Nisi watu wazuri. Okay. Justice, do you have a line?
Yeah, I think after that we are going to Dr. Mofo, who probably had been mentioned heavily earlier, and then of course he also had his hand he was in the rotation for submission. It will be fair for him to go, then we can proceed.
Thank you, Justice. Justice, you need to protect me from Jadala. Jadala, if you have questions, please, I would request that you bring them after I finish. Otherwise, you are interfering with my line of thoughts. But that's not to say that I'm afraid of handling your questions. Justice Mutai Mjadala. This discussion is very important. I like the latter bit of exchange in terms of communication between the three of you, or among the three of you, because it reiterates what I have said for the longest and consistently, that the issue of tribe and ethnicity is quite insignificant to some large extent in how we relate with each other at social level, and that this is a weapon used by one person. But as far as the issue of budget and resources allocation is concerned, I just want us to have a snippet of the budget allocation for 2022, the disbursement for the counties. Have it with me, I will share with you. But importantly, I want to mention 2 or 3 counties, and you see how the distribution of 29 billion was done. In Bungoma, they had 0.8 billion. In Embu, they had 0.4 billion. Kajiado, they had 0.6 billion. I said Migori, 0.6 billion. I say Nyeri, 0.45 billion. I've got Wajir, 0.7 billion. That by itself, you ask yourself, where is the biasness in the location of that figure? But when it comes to the rating in terms of the performance by the counties, Murang'a County, which receives 0.4 billion, is said to be the best performing. Is it the issue of representation, or is it the issue of the distribution and allocation of resources? The question here comes in when we talk of our leadership. And I'll give you a case in point, Bungoma, which I think I've given a case of a 0.8 billion or something. They have the governor by the name of Lusaka. This person is serving in his second term. the first term, it was highly controversial because of misappropriation of funds. Among other things, he could afford a 1 million Kenya shillings for a wheelbarrow, which he said is non-carcinogenic. Today, ask him where that non-carcinogenic wheelbarrow is and how better it performs than the one that was bought for 250 shillings in Moranga. That is what I'm talking about. The other thing I want to talk about is you are asking yourselves about the background. Many people think that I am in abroad, but I want to tell you I'm a resident of Ruiru. And this is where I found myself after I graduated from Jomo Kenyatta University, because I wanted to settle somewhere which was proximity to Nairobi and all that. And most other people have settled there. I want to shock you today and tell you my neighbor, one of our own, is Silvinas Osoro. He's built a mansionette there. But when I settled there and I've served there as a chairman of the area, the greatest problem we had is the infrastructure. Remember that time, Uhuru Kenyatta was the president. But predominantly that area being owned by the Kikuyu, we couldn't have resources from the national treasury or county treasury to help us build the roads. We made our own contributions. And as a chairman, I spearheaded that. So the question comes in, how do you benefit when the person in the apex of leadership is one of your own? The answer is these people care about themselves first before you. And that's why I said when the budget allocation is done in Parliament, these people will not stall the discussion there or the appropriation as it has been allocated from the Treasury or approved by the executive, because their packages have been appropriated as they would wish. The only discussion they will have is how they will shut down the economy or the budget allocation if they've not been given their packages and if the CDF has not been allocated to them. But even when the CDF has been allocated to them, in the figures and ratios that have become public to us, where, for example, Junet Mohammed gets more than Didi Nyoro, in a subsequent discussion, he will say that now we realize why Didi Nyoro constituency has been performing better. It is because he has been biased in the allocation. Yet, Junet Mohammed misappropriates his money. So again, who benefits from the tribalism? It is the politician. The other thing I needed to speak about is about the residence of the members of parliament. And I mentioned about Osoro. And it was deliberate because Osoro, I would have discussion with him and he will help us, access some facilities. Say, for example, the lighting of the streets. Say, we need to see how can he help us as a person who's got access to power. But this person comes from somewhere in Kisii. How often does he interact with the people there, with the social amenities there, with the infrastructures there, to believe that the equal access to resources that he advocates where he lives, the residents there who vote them, who give them access to power and who send them to parliament are getting proper representation. That's why we've got to be deliberate and say one of the things we need to have is our members of parliament need to live with us. They need to declare where they live, because you cannot be a representative of people you don't interact with. People you only come after 1 month, people you come after 2 weeks, and you are given, among other things, you're given resources, you're given cars, you're given gas to be able to represent your people. So that is another question. Lusaka, for example, do you know where Lusaka lives? Lusaka lives in Kitengela. Okay? That is where he think priorities are. He doesn't care about his people. The other thing I wanted to mention was the issue of one man, one vote, one representation. One man, one shilling. I'll mention about it. It sounded controversial. I am not a proponent of one man, one shilling, one vote. I am a proponent of one man, one shilling. The reason is because you need to take resources to where people are. We know for sure there are places, there are counties where people live more. And because we are multicultural society, we need to serve people. If you are Kalenjin and you live in Nairobi, why don't we take resources where you are in higher numbers? It is not a question of who you are, it's a question of where you live. And you need to live where you're convenient, where you think you are. That's why, for example, when it talks about the issue of the national census, the politicians will tell you, no, they are counting us now. We will need these numbers to allocate resources. Don't be counted where you live. Be counted where you came from. So how does this discussion help us? It helps us take resources to where they are not needed. And that's where the question of priority comes in. I want to talk about the issue of Mombasa Malaba Road, railway, for example, and those infrastructures. That the priority was not to build the railway from Malaba coming backwards, but the other way around. But even at some point, the impetus and the significance was lost because it was intended, among other things, to serve religions, Rwanda, Uganda. But remember, Uganda felt it was necessary for them to construct their railway to connect through Tanzania. And that's how the significance was lost over time. It is not that a resident in Muhoroni wants to use the railway to bring a container of what? We know, I mean, you know, Western is using hard words like transportation of defecation. And I'm wondering, what is he talking about? Let me ask a question. We are talking about
in your last minute, Doctor. In your last minute.
Yeah. Perfect. Let's talking about the national resources and projects that generate revenues that benefit people. The areas like Muhoroni, the areas like Mumia, the areas like Zoia, they had their good projects, national projects, generating resources for them. Who ran them down? Is it the politicians? Is it one of their own? So these are the hard questions we need to ask ourselves. The last thing I want to talk about the issue of the Constitution and how it would help streamline some of the policies. When I talk about the Ethnic Integration Act of 1989, which is a policy founded on the racial equality article of the Constitution in Singapore, in Article 12, it is a constitutional issue, is a constitutional policy. Therefore, we are saying, yes, we know where the problem is, we know what the solutions are, but most especially, we have people who, in terms of our representation, have failed us. And you and me do not benefit from tribalism. Thank you, guys.
Okay, well, Mofo, I think that you have some good points, but then again, you say something like the one you just said at the end there, and it's not correct. Just because these things are structural doesn't mean that individuals don't benefit from them. And that sentence you just said there is not correct. Number two, something else, you told me to give you time, so I gave you all the time. But the problem is that if you talk for 6 minutes and 3/4 or maybe a third of what you're saying is not correct, then it kind of beats the purpose, right? So now we have to go back and fix them. For you to talk about Muhoroni, Trans Nzoia, and all the other regions as not having economical or questioning the economic prowess of those areas, that's just not correct. That's like saying Kericho and tea doesn't matter. That's saying Trans Nzoia and maize doesn't matter. That's saying Migori and gold doesn't matter. That's saying Muhoroni and sugar doesn't matter. That's ridiculous. And we cannot sit here as a panel of very smart people and agree or let you say things like that. And this is why I was interrupting you earlier on. Okay. So Sam, I don't know if you're there, but the host has rightfully told me that he's trying to go towards the end now, because I think that most of us who are on the panel have spoken. So Sam is the only one who has not given new or his initial thoughts. Sam, the opportunity is yours. If not, we'll go with academia, one, and then we'll start winding down. Sam.
Thank you, Mjadala. I think I will not take long. I'll start by an exclamation. Let me say so. The day that, okay, let me put it. There is places where, or countries where, they have practiced democracy for as long as it has existed, for more than 150 years practicing democracy. But the day I'll wake up and I find a black man contesting as a conservative to be president in those areas or to be prime minister, and then he's actually elected, that is when I will know that people think differently when it comes to nominating people or electing people to these powerful positions, political positions. Majority of the people that I meet, we've never had a problem with tribe, race, or anything like that. But when it comes to electing an individual to a position of influence, that is where that thing comes in. There is some comfort that comes with, this is my brother, this comes from my region, this comes from my race, this is my tribe, kind of understands what I need more than the other person. So sometimes looking at that, I don't know whether it is fallacious or it is something within our system. I haven't, maybe a social scientist can explain it to me better. There is some comfort that comes with it. That is why in Kenya, for example, if you want to contest for presidency, the very first thing is, because it's about numbers. Like, where are you going to get these numbers from? Yeah, you can stand as a candidate and you have a very beautiful track record, development oriented, just like Gatanga, the former Gatanga MP, Peter Kenneth. He had a stellar record when he was a member of parliament. And he kind of stood out from the rest of the people that were contesting in 2013. But then when you count his votes at the end, Abdu Badida comes ahead of him. So there is something that I have never understood. When it comes to voting for someone, then that thing kicks in. But it becomes sad when one person has been elected to be president or to be prime minister or wherever, and then they advance that agenda in a negative way, that I have the resources now, I'll want to skew these resources to the people that supported me more. That is the quagmire that we're in as a country. Now, for example, William Ruto feels like the people from the mountain might not vote for him because Gachagua is out. And therefore, for him to be re-elected, he must look at a different way of advancing development. So I'll have to tackle the Westerners and the people from the Kisii region. So that region has to get something substantial so that when I stand before them, they can appreciate me more. So at the end of the day, it becomes like, I want to be re-elected. I want to balance out politics, but then we become so corrupt along that line because you're like, you can do that. Another problem is of course the inflated costs of whatever thing that we do, the mega projects we do in our country. The costs are outrageous. They are out of this world. So there is the tribal part, but then there is the comfort part that I am not able to understand. For example, I'll have a very difficult time if for example, Matiang'i contests for presidency and is a serious candidate, and we have Kasongo, William Ruto. Definitely I'll vote for Matiang'i, I'm sorry to say that. And of course, he's not the best of the people that are being fronted. Some people can look at me as being tribal, that you're not looking at the track record for William Ruto, what he's done, SHA and whatever they've the front around. But then I will feel more comfortable with Matiang'i based on his track record. Both of them will be having a track record. But then what I don't understand, basically what I'm saying is, there is something that I have never understood with the human mind, how people make decisions, especially political decisions. Is it possible that someone can completely detach themselves from being comfortable that this is someone I know and I feel that he understands my needs, and that is why I always vote for them. And that's why I've always asked, if the Kikuyu people have voted in for their own, and these people that they have voted in, they have skewed the development in such a way that we see them favored in terms of schools, road network, and whatever development that we need from our government, then what business will they have to vote for another person who they are not sure that will take care of their interests? Because we're not in a socialist society that everyone must get before we clean the plate. I mean, that is kind of the quagmire that I'm in. But my problem is that politicians always run away with this tribal thing, but they use it negatively to the disadvantage of the people that voted for them, unfortunately so. Finally, there is for example, 2007, I've heard people say that people fought because of tribalism and all that. Of course, that was part of it. But the truth is that people voted in 2007 because the then sitting president, Kibaki, stole an election. That was outright theft. And factions that were supporting Kibaki at that time were against factions that were supporting Raila. At that time, the Kalenjin nation and the Luo nation were together. But that was not the case in 2013, where the region, the border between Kisumu and Kericho was volatile. So remember that 2013, it was different from 2007. So it's not about like one tribe against another. Faction that supported another candidate. So I will not tie that entirely to tribalism. I can call it supportism if there is something like that. Thank you.
Sam, ngoja nikuulize, fungua mic. Umesema tu sahi with your own admission ya kwamba wewe ikifika kwa debe sahi utapatia Matiang'i, and then you asked us, you don't know why we feel comfortable voting people who are associated with that. So then how you right now, could you tell us what your feeling is about voting for someone who you associate with?
I mean, I don't know. For example, if I have Matiang'i and I have how do you call it, the gentleman, the old guy, the former CJ Maraga, and yeah, I'll vote for Matiang'i for different reasons.
Okay.
But then from outside, people will think that I'm voting for Matiang'i because when we are having a discussion, like if I present it over here, when you're having that discussion, there are people who will feel that I'm doing that because I'm a Kisi, and therefore I'm supporting my own.
Okay.
Unfortunately so.
So it just happens to be a coincidence that one of the best candidates is a Kisi and you're a Kisi.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And then I have also listened to, I have been at a place where people don't give, I sometimes I feel like I am better than the people that we always think they are better in terms of democracy. There are people who will never, ever think about who is on the ballot. As long as it's a conservative candidate, they go for it. Whether it's a calf, whether it's a goat or a sheep, they'll vote for it. Unfortunately so. So at least I can have a cross-table conversation that who are you? What are you presenting to me? At least I can to some extent have that. But this imaginary thing that there are people somewhere that are more advanced, they look at things differently and all that, it never happens. It never happens. Only a few people in society, if people are talking about the United States, it only boils down to a few states that make a decision on who becomes president, on rational thinking.
Unajua hata hiyo United States yenye wanashinda wakitumia kama example hapa, unao ni watu tu wenye wajui United States vizuri, na sahii president wao anakaaje. So tukuange saa zingine pia tuangalie mambo yetu kivyetu kwanza nyumbani, tusilete United States haraka hivyo. Mtu anasema hapa mambo za Spanish, sijui Hispanic, na hata juu voting tendencies zao wase vitu wenye wanasimamia na etc. Anyway, so academia I'll give you, but you start our round of kufunga. Mutai ulikuwa unataka kusema kitu? Nisalimie basi alafu tuendelee. Fungua.
I just wanted to say that wacha kushow off.
Ni sasa nimeshow off aje? Hata nikiongea tu sheng pia ni kushow off. Unataka niseme shembeteng ndo ujue si show off? Mimi siongee lugha ya machokora. Academia, I'll give you the opportunity na wewe ndo utatuanzia kufunga. So first give your submission and then say your last word and then we'll go in circles here just for people kufunga. Academia, please.
Thank you. I want to register myself with the sentiments of some, to the extent that we recognize that there are people who do not vote based on tribe. But again, to say that Matiang'i is the best candidate, at least you should be specific whether for people who have shown their interest or is the best in Kenya today. To that extent, I will disagree, because by way of conduct, I cannot say Matiang'i is the best. And you have to convince me what he has done.
Una disagree aje na opinion ya mtu? Hiyo si opinion yake. Hiyo ni opinion yake.
Yeah, I also have a right to disagree with your opinion, and that does not mean I'm right or you are right. It's just a way of.
So, according to you, who's the best candidate, Academia?
According to me, unless you are giving me names or you just asking me the best candidate in terms of character. If you are giving me names,
shida yako ni lawyer. Lawyer ni wakora, waendelea bwana na submission achana na mimi.
Sasa Dr. Mofo, you talked about the counties and all that, and let me tell you, if you look at Murang'a, you say now Murang'a is the best, but look at the best counties in 2023-2024. You realize that Murang'a was nowhere number one in 2023, but is number one. And in the top 10 in 2024, best performing counties, you realize that it is a mix of things. So Murang'a is number one, Homa Bay, Kirinyaga, Nzoia, Bungoma, so and so, Kisumu and all that. So they are mixed. So that tells you, if you give people opportunity without favoritism, they do. So that alone can demonstrate that if people are given a fair chance, they will do best. But if today there are counties and Homa Bay can be more or less the same with Murang'a, why would Murang'a have so many roads than Homa Bay County in the first place? National roads construction. Why would Murang'a have more roads than Homa Bay? But when it comes to performance of counties, they are almost tying, because Murang'a is 54, Homa Bay is 53. So something like that. So that is what we are talking about. That give people, let us have equity, and then we can compete on that basis.
Ask your leaders. That's what I've been saying. Ask your leaders.
It's not leaders, because it's not your leaders. Because national, you cannot tell me that all the roads in maybe, let's say, even Rift Valley. So do you tell me all the roads constructed in Rift Valley is because of the leaders from that place, but not leader from Ukambani or from Kisii or from Northeastern? That is being disingenuous, because we know when roads are in Central, it is because Kibaki favored the region, Uhuru favored the region, Kenyatta favored the region. When Moi got the presidency, there was a lot of tarmac roads in Rift Valley. In fact, people say that there are some even places where there is no even people, vehicles. It's just goats and animals lying themselves on the road. So it was tarmacked in other places. But when Uhuru and Raila came together in 2018. There was some element of certain things happening in Kisumu. Why would it take Raila and Uhuru to come together for something to be done in Kisumu? Or Raila and Ruto for some roads to be constructed in Homa Bay? That is what we must ask. Why? Why don't we even have those roads in Machakos? And Machakos is close to Nairobi more than Homa Bay. Why would Homa Bay have good roads? Just because Raila and Ruto are now working together and Kalonzo and Ruto are not working together. Therefore, Machakos or Makueni, which is very close to Nairobi, some few minutes or hours, do not have roads, those places. So we have to address those things, Dr. Mofo. If you can't accept that, don't tell me about leaders. Don't tell me about leaders. That is wrong. So we have to confront this thing head on. And I'm one of the people who have said, until we decongest power, we are not going to get it right. We will not get it right. So we have to decongest power, and that power is the control of resources from the state house. We have to decongest that total control of resources from the state house. If somebody can tell you that a certain person is appointed in a ministry that is our kitchen, what does that tell you? So in other words, there are people who are not supposed to occupy certain places just because of their tribe, not because they are qualified, no, because you are qualified, but you don't come from my tribe, and therefore we don't do with that ministry. What are they doing in that ministry that they don't trust any other person who does not speak their language? That is what we are asking. So to me, if you tell me constitution will not solve this, we are no more than 10 years, going into 15. We had the constitution in 2010. It has not solved it. And it will not solve. It will take the leadership of the country to fix this software and hardware. Constitution will not solve our problems.
All right, academia.
So I think,
okay, your last
think
word.
as I learned, what we need to do is to make presidency less attractive. Today, Rigiji is telling you that Ruto or the government betrayed a particular community, which is false. That is the narrative. Many people will buy into that. So if you allow him to go back to that office, having told you that there are people who have been removed from a particular group, is simply going to reinstate those people. And therefore, we are not going to get it because he needs that power to exercise it. Now he cannot appoint his people in that position because to him, Ruto removed Kikuyus because Ruto is fighting Kikuyus. But the question is, who put those Kikuyus in those positions in the first place? Were there not other tribes that were supposed to be appointed? Why is it that is only Kikuyus who are occupying those places or positions prior to his election? So if we cannot afford to kemea hizo, we have a very long way to go. So if it is wrong today, it will remain wrong. So it cannot be convenient today. You say Ruto is doing bad. The other time, another person did exactly that, and you are quiet. We cannot run a country like that. And as I learned in Mjadala, do you know something that I realized late? That post-election violent victims, they were supposed to be compensated. Do you know it is only Nyanza and Western that people are not getting those compensation across the country prior to 2022 election?
I didn't know that.
So, no, I saw it yesterday when Nikal was, in fact, you to ask, and Nikal said it is true that Western and Nyanza have not received compensation. The debate all those years, and the reason is the people who are in charge did not allow that to take place. And why would victims from a particular region be compensated while others from particular region are not compensated? The reason being because people handling those things are from a particular region. So to him, the other people are not important. That's the truth. Otherwise, why would we not compensate other people? Because we experience the same thing. So those are the things we are saying. If we cannot call them out the way they are, then we are just being dishonest and will not get it. So we have to decongest presidency because it was through it. It was during the Uru's regime that people were being compensated, but it was skewed. From 2013, particular regions that did not support the regime were locked out, and now they are trying to trace them. When I saw the MP from, I don't know who really, somebody Nyambita said, in fact, he was talking about this thing today in the morning, Citizen TV, and he said something that people are saying that Luo people or Luo Nyans are now in the government and they are rating, they cannot call the government. But he asked a very simple thing. If roads are being constructed in Homa Bay because they are in government, certain things are going down there because they are in government. Why would they oppose government just because government is killing people? When 2 years ago, the same government was killing people, but doing those things the other side. But those people did not come out to question the government. People were killed in Nyalenda, but there were no particular group came out in public to condemn that we are not part of this government because you are killing people in Kisumu or any other part of the country, and therefore don't construct roads in our area while killing people in certain areas. So we cannot have double standards. That's what we're seeing. And that does not mean you support extrajudicial killing. No, people have to be fair. If the other regime killed people but took resources to their region, today we are saying Ruto is killing people and again taking resources. So there is no correlation between taking resources to Homa Bay and killing people. We have to call killing people a bad thing, but you cannot say people have to reject what they are getting just because the government is killing people. Why did those people not reject the same thing?
Asante wakili. Tutaongea wakati mwingine. Na mimi by then napenda ukiongea hivi. Ile yenye unaongea ni kama unalala staki. Ile hii iko sawa. Hiyo energy iko fit. Hiyo tempo. Hiyo tempo iko sawa. Okay. So folks, nyinyi ni wenyeji na nataka tumalize kwa wakati unaofaa. Nataka maximum tumalize hapa hivi in the next 6 plus 15 minutes. Tumalize in the next hiyo 20 ngapi minutes. Asanteni sana. So nitawapa kila mmoja wakati wake muweze kusema zenyu za mwisho. Nataka kwanza nianze na Mwalimu Wanda. Mwalimu Wanda, wewe ni mgeni wetu, unakuja hapa kila mara. Wewe ni mzoefu wa kuja hapa, kwa hivyo nitakupatia wakati wako, utupe tu mambo yako ya mwisho basi, alafu tuweze kuanza kufunga kikao.
Asante sana. I'll say these few things. Number one, nafikiri mjadala na Justice Namtai, pengine we need to go the Desmond Tutu way. People, you should probably think in the line of having these space meetings. Then we talk about our experiences. Because when you listen to our submission or the submissions, you'll realize we are pulling from either sides. And the reason it has something to do with the tribes, the benefits of a region. Pengine tukifunguka watu waongee, wengine Kenyans are empathetic in a big percentage. Chances are some will start looking at other things as this is bad. Hii tumekuwa tukikosea jamaa. Pengine itatoa politicians to start using to continue using tribes as a card or as a vehicle that propels them to those positions. Now, having said that, I'll come back to this and disagree on a certain point that I had. Not just on disagreeing, but I'm looking into national development. We are losing potentials, or we are missing out on potentials of other areas. Look at areas like Elgeyo Marakwet, kwenye kunakuwa na bandits kila wakati, vita. it's only because no one is interested to address the potentials of those areas. And they are very potentials. If you look into the list of the marginalized areas in Kenya, it answers or it raises so many questions. It is so, I mean, try at your own time and look into the list of marginalized regions in Kenya. You'll be shocked to how those regions are. Therefore, if we want to grow the nation as a whole, I still don't believe in this idea that let us take development or let us put this money where people are. To me, I look at it from the angle of what leads to rural to urban migration. Is it not that these people are running to get those services? Is it not that this person is moving from that kamsitu yenye umekataa kupeleka barabara, umekataa kupeleka hospitali. Now this person is struggling pushing his way to that town because huko sasa kuna barabara, huko kuna stima, huko kuna shule, kuna hospitali. What if you chose to take that road in that rural setting? But if you chose to take that hospital in those settings, will it not make the distribution of people is congested in one area? Then we forget about utilizing other areas. As I look into, or as I echo the sentiments of academia, these problems that are hitting us today, that are political, social, and economical, if we don't open our eyes, accept the reality, face it head on, then tutajikuta tunazunguka tu. Because you look at you look into, and the reason why I'm proposing or suggesting is we have a space where people just share their experiences in terms of either I was a victim in ABC because of my tribe. It's still in the line that kuna jinsi fulani tunabandikana majina, kuna jinsi fulani tunafikiri kazi fulani hazifai akina fulani, zinapaswa zifanywe na akina fulani tu. And it has gone, because politics controls the economy of the country, you've gone to an extent or to a point where if tribe-wise you are not close to power, sasa tunawasahau. And some politicians are taking advantage of it. You are now to go to Dr. Mofo. Some politicians are taking advantage of this. Only thing that Dr. Mofo didn't probably mention is that as these leaders take advantage of it, yeye huwa anawarushia peanuts. Atakula yenye atakula, but kuna ile yenye anawarushia kidogo. Then we have regions, now that they are not in power, they are not close to it. Hata hizo peanuts huwa hawazioni. So those regions are completely forgotten. So I yield on this. Tribalism is bad. Ethnicity is killing us. Politics that is tribal is killing us. We are such a powerful country. So many people are educated. If we unite and address national development, where I want to see any other person grow, then we stand a chance not only to grow as a country, but to be able to grow to be able to even now get outside in our neighboring, at this in the sense of we are growing our country, we are developing ourselves, but based on the level of literacy in the country, we are at a position of doing quite a lot. Only if we don't allow tribal politics to overrule jadala.
Shukrani sana. Nataka kuafikiana na wewe Mwalimu Wanda, nashukuru sana kwa maoni yako. Nafikiana na wewe kwamba ulisikia jinsi ambavyo mimi Justice na Mutai tulikuwa tukiwa na majadiliano hapo ya kwamba wakatuuliza wewe ulikuwaje, uli experience mambo ya tribalism vipi, ukabila vipi, mkapata kwamba kulikuwa na nafasi pale ya kupiga hadithi ama kupata mjadala ambao ungekuwa ni mzuri sana. Kwa hivyo nafikiana nawe kwamba tunafaa kupanga kikao kingine watu wakaweza kusema kwamba post-election violence yaliwakuta wapi, yaliwaathiri kivipi, na wanafikiria nini kuhusu post-election violence na mambo ya ukabila, hata kama ni kikazi ama na hata unaweza pata kwamba na hata na ndoa na mambo ya ya kuwa na dating, watu wamekuwekwa kando kwa sababu na kabila fulani. Western, tupe lako la mwisho.
Mjadala, this topic is pertinent, and the worst we can do is to sweep it under the carpet. One thing is that some Kenyans are not ready to admit that they have had privileges at the expense of other Kenyans. Otherwise, if that was not factual, we wouldn't be having per capita and regional disparities. If that was not factual, we would not be having a polarized society and highly contested elections. And that when elections approach, the country, the society is on tenterhooks. This is only one country where when elections are approaching, there's tension in the air. Tension in the air is like you expect the worst. What explains that? There are contradictions within our society that we have not addressed and we're not willing to address. Those demons will not go away on their own. They must be exorcised. Second, Mjadala, as I said at the beginning, and I'm ending on the same note, political tribalism, which is different from moral ethnicity, where you celebrate your culture, your language, who you are, you can dance your traditional dance and stuff like that. You're not a threat to anybody. As opposed to politically mobilizing to checkmate the other party, the other person, will not disappear on its own. It takes decisive, committed, visionary leadership. Citizens on their own cannot detribalize. Otherwise, we will not discuss power, resources, and the attendant privileges, the privileges of modernity, which come courtesy of controlling the levers of power. So Kenyans may wish to be detribalized, but unless their political actors choose to demobilize ethnicity from our politics and our social life, it's not going to happen. Mwalimu Nyerere did it in Tanzania. That is his legacy. He detribalized Tanzania. That is his legacy. I mentioned about Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore. He did it in Singapore. That is his legacy. Leopold Sedar Senghor did it in Senegal. That is his legacy. So if you look around countries in Africa that are doing well as far as democracy is concerned, Mauritius, Botswana, Senegal, South Africa, Cape Verde, these are countries that have demobilized sectarian interests in their politics. Tanzania, it's going south now, but for the longest time, they have had uninterrupted social cohesion. We are not going to realize that until and unless we get leaders who see Kenyans for who they are, citizens who relate to the state on the basis of the public goods that the state must deliver to them. Mofo talked about this infrastructure. Mjadala will tell you, because if you read Animal Farm, pigs, when they take power, they're questioning the capacity of the other animals to remember. And that's why in Kenya, people hate history. It's there in Animal Farm, that masterpiece. If you want to load it over people, you just distort history or don't teach them history or discourage them from reading what's happening, what happened before. Look, the infrastructure that Mofo is talking about, SGR was supposed to be an East African, Central African project from Mombasa to Uganda to Rwanda to Eastern Congo. That is how it was conceptualized. Part of the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. Look at what happened. The Kenyan political elite under Uhuru Kenyatta, and I don't know those people who came before, they behave the way they usually behave. You know, when there's a big mega project, you strategize on how to extract rents from this project. So as usual, they were targeting land along where that railway line will pass and stuff like that. The likes of Kagame who take no nonsense, Museveni, they said, no, we don't have money to waste on you people. We're not going to be party to this kind of looting. You can continue with your thing, man. Who are you? We know you people are corrupt. So Kagame pulled out, Museveni pulled out. They were left with a skunk. It's a skunk because you and me are paying for that. And we can't show value for money. Most of the money ended up in people's pockets, Uhuru Kenyatta and his cronies. The Ugandan pipeline, oil pipeline, it's been constructed from Western Uganda to Tanga Port, Tanzania. That's a long route. As opposed to passing through Kenya to Mombasa, shorter, which was supposed to be cheaper. No, Museveni realized, no, it was damn expensive to construct that oil pipeline, to carry crude oil from Western Uganda to the port of Mombasa for transportation overseas. Hence, he took the Tanzanian route. Can you imagine it's cheaper? And they're doing it now. Why? Again, the Kenyan political elite had strategized themselves on how to extract rents along the pipeline. Museveni said, no, I've been in this game much longer. You just happened the other day. You are rookies in this game. There's no free money from Uganda. I'm going to use the Tanzanian route. It's cheaper than that. So these are the things we are talking about. Political elites that only want to feather their nests at the expense of the rest of Kenyans. And when Mofo justifies this and says that and that, it's problematic. Because the poverty you see in Kenya is man-made. The collapse of the sugar industry, the fish industry, the maize industry, name it. Cotton industry in Nyanza. These are man-made things to impoverish people. And so that they can be beholden to you. You are like their messiah. You're going to bring goods to them when you're in power. You impoverish them. You don't want to empower. You say there has been a president from that part of the country. Or people say, no, who did that? The regime that came before. And so we're saying this tribalism thing will not end. It is entwined with the political economy. So if you don't sort out the political economy of Kenya and you just go around preaching about tribalism, oh, Maraga will end tribalism, that's wishful thinking. It's as naive as it comes. Maraga will not end tribalism in Kenya. Matiang'i will not end tribalism in Kenya. No single person will end tribalism in Kenya unless you radically reconceptualize the Kenyan state and how the economy works in Kenya. If you don't, you're not going to succeed, Mjadala. That's the point I'm making. Well, Sam is talking about he will vote for Matiang'i because of track record. What track record? Help me understand. Matiang'i's track record is extrajudicial killings. That's his track record. His track record is eviscerating the Kenyan education system. This education system that is destroyed is one of the people who insisted that it must be pushed down the throats of Kenyans. This thing here, that is, no one figures out what it is. He's one of the people who forced it down Kenyan throats. Is it working? His legacy is disregard for court orders. That's his legacy. His legacy is corruption. Somebody who was in power for 10 years, and within those 10 years, he emerged as a dollar millionaire. What industries does he run? What is his intellectual property? So, Mjadala, I'm saying, if you want to pick Matiang'i, when the choice is between Matiang'i and William Ruto, it cannot be on the basis of values. It cannot be on the basis of tribe or prejudice. It can't be on the basis of values because they are both status quo people, both of them. So you can't justify your picking of Matiang'i as opposed to Ruto on the basis of one is invested in the Kenyan nation building project as opposed to the other. Matiang'i is reactionary. Somebody's talking about somebody being conservative. He's reactionary. He's a traditionalist. As far as the reading of the Kenyan economy is concerned, he's not a radical person. He will not empower poor people. So that's what I mean. So we must be honest, even with our political choices. Let's say, no, here I'm not for the constitution. Let me not lie to you. I'm not for the rule of law. Let me not lie to you. I am not bothered by extrajudicial killings. Let me not lie to you. I'm not bothered with tribalism. I just want this person because I think I'll position myself strategically and I can benefit from the levers of power. You see, this person holds power. But don't tell us that this person has qualitative values or transformative values as opposed to the status quo. He does not. And that's factually correct. Mjadala as I yield. Do you know that the judiciary under one-party state served the executive? Do you know that, Mjadala? It did. So let's put it that from 63 to 2010, roughly, when we had this new constitutional dispensation, the judiciary served the executive, where people would appear in court late, past hours. Charges would be read before them and they would be locked up within a couple of minutes. At that time, Maraga was serving the judiciary. Or what was he doing? When people were fighting against one-party state in the 80s, and where was Maraga? What was he doing at that time? Well, he was serving the state, wasn't he? He was part of the state, wasn't he? Okay, so you tell me somebody like that emerging in 2025 or 2027, he represents Kenya's future. You know what they call that? They call it false consciousness. False consciousness is the inability of an individual to identify who is the source of their injustice they are facing. So they end up with their oppressor as a liberator. False consciousness. This is a retired person who has worked for the Kenyan state almost his entire adult life. Oh, he didn't see anything wrong with it. It's now when he's realizing that the state is not working. You know how convenient it is when you have got your benefits, very cushy benefits, having risen to the pinnacle of a very strategic arm of the government, the judiciary. You are aligning with such a person. He's a status quo person. And if you listen to him when he appeared on TV the other day, Maraga could not think on his feet on what he would do. If tomorrow he was to wake up as the president of Kenya, what are you going to do? What he did was to talk about task forces and experts, things we know have not taken us anywhere. I have formed a task force to do into the prison reform, William Ruto. I've appointed a task force of experts to look into the education sector, the higher education funding. We don't know these things. He said he will do those things. He's relying on those things. He couldn't think on his feet on how he's going to unlock these things we're talking about. Well, you want to vote for him. Why? Probably it's because of his walking style. He's different from Ruto's. Or his height, different from Ruto's. But qualitatively, I can tell you, he does not represent anything transformative.
Wow.
Apart from that annulment of elections, I don't think he holds anything transformative. And even the annulment,
Ari na kupiga kichwa huyo jamaa ati walking style. Halala. Haya maliza basi tuendelee. Tunafaa kufunga.
even the annulment of the presidential elections had to take the other jurists. If he and only he had annulled the elections, well, it would have stood. It had to take.
Hello. Where Mutai?
Can you hear me, Mjadala?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, I don't know what's happening. I can hear Western, I can hear.
As I yield, I'm saying you can quote the US. When you look at how the US and its institutions are working, it does not mean that Kenya and the US are on par. What you have, the argument people should make when they invoke the US and such societies is this. In the US, institutions are so robust that they can survive the eccentricities of Donald Trump. They can survive. A president like that, who is unpredictable and is eccentric and he wakes up and says, a weak state like Kenya cannot survive somebody like that. Somebody who is so erratic, who is going to pull everybody else into the vortex. And therefore, if you remember 2020, When Donald Trump was asked whether if he lost elections, he would concede defeat, and he was vague. Do you know that no one was bothered as to whether he would leave or not? They knew one thing for sure. He loses elections, he stays put in the Oval Office. The very, very Secret Service people who are guarding, they would carry him shoulder high or whatever out of the office. Did the security people who guarded Mwai Kibaki at the time when he stole elections carry him out of State House? But they were the ones who would shoot you. In the US, they will carry you out. You have lost elections. We are not loyal to you. We are loyal to the American state. Go. We don't have that. So that's the distinction. It's not that they've got mad people the way we do. When we have mad people, the cost is steep. When they've got mad people, they can survive them. Biden was senile, but the American state worked. It did work. And the rest of the world could let me land. They could see that this president here is not in charge of his faculties. But the state worked because there are institutions that are strong enough to move things. We don't have that in Kenya. So don't dare fate. Don't dare fate and say, even Americans can survive. We can also survive. No, we cannot. I can guarantee you. I yield, Mjadala. Thank you.
Asante sana. Kesho lazima ukuje mapema kama kawaida, na najua kwamba utakuja. Asante kwa maoni yako yote. Zidi kuwa sharp hivyo hivyo. Enda library ndio kesho tukifika basi uweze kutisha mtai. Asante sana. Ruderman. Hata na Sam nikupatia wakati baadaye, usikuja hapa ndani na sijui rebuttal. Tunafunga. Ruderman funga.
Okay. Mimi chenye nasema ni kuwa ile yenye Samson umesema ati kuna track record ya Ruto, please toa hiyo hapo. Sioni hiyo track record yenye unasema. Labda useme first lady aligeuza maji ya kisima ikakuwa wine. Okay. Sasa
alisema Matiang'i sio Ruto.
Alisema Matiang'i and Ruto. At the track record those people. Aya. My submission is ndio tumaliza hii kitu ni kuwa when we were growing up tulikuwa na hizi vitu ati tunachukia Wajaluo, but wakati nilienda secondary nilikapatana na friends wenye ni Wajaluo. They were very nice to me. Mpaka unajua who changed the narrative of that community, mpaka wakaanza kuvotia Ruto, yani Raila, to the last man. It is us young thugs wenye walikuja wakawaambia don't sexualize bodies of a person na politics. It doesn't work like that. Our grandfathers used to think that somebody who is this way, he cannot lead. Somebody who is that way cannot lead. We changed that narrative. And that is how that region became the stronghold ya Raila. So if we spread this across the country, in fact, we can change much. Lakini Samson ndani huyu Western yenye anatuambia ni kama tunaenda step moja mbele, tunarudi mbili nyuma. So it is not even constructing. So give us the solution how we are supposed to go about it, because this thing will come, election will come. How can we go and choose a good leader? That's what we want. That is the state we are right now. I land.
Asante sana. Wewe Ruderman, hata wewe siku moja tutakupatia break, utakuwa tunaongea, ulete tu jokes. Wewe ni mtu wa majokes. Ulianza na Wildebeest zimekuwa launch, sijui nini. Asante sana, nashukuru. Wewe naona uko mashinani kabisa. Mofo, nikupata fursa, please achana na mambo ya ribato, usema tu yako ya mwisho, alafu tuendelee. Mofo.
Thank you, Mjadala. Mjadala, when we speak about tribalism, there's a word that is synonymous with it, and that is corruption. If I put a question to everyone here and ask you, which tribe is the most corrupt? We don't have those figures. We don't have an answer with assertion to that question. But we know individuals, politician, political class. And that's what we're talking about. This country ails more from corruption than tribalism. Tribalism is a road, is a ladder, and has to ascend to power. As I conclude, Jada, I don't know how much you travel, I bet you have. Mutai Justice. I want you to look at the Google map, 3D. I want you to look at the road called the Trans-Canada Road that traverses from the east to the west, from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Is about 700 kilometers. Is about 7,000 kilometers. That road alone, if you drive from somewhere called Nova Scotia in the eastern, come all the way to all the eastern provinces, come to Quebec, go down to Ontario, somewhere around Ontario, it ends from being it ends from being a dual carriage. It becomes a two-way traffic and continues for about 2,000 kilometers, all the way to about somewhere called, I think in Manitoba. From there, it's a dual carriage. So what am I talking about? This is a big economy that has allocated its resources appropriately and found on it as a matter of priority to dual the section of about 2,000, about almost a third of that section, a major road. It's about priorities, it's about what we do with those resources. The other thing I want to mention as I talk about the infrastructures, I want to talk about the JKIA, the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. How well do we use of it? It's a national resource, it's a major project. But as a matter of fact, the tourists that go through the JKIA, majority of them, a high percentage, 60 or 70% of that, they use it on transit to Tanzania. Before Magufuli, they didn't have a major national carrier. Okay, but those people, they land at JKIA, they come, they are taken by the shuttles, they are picked at the airport, they are driven to Arusha through Namanga. They don't spend a coin, they don't spend a dime in your country. All they do is pay for the shuttle transport. But even majority of them are operated by the Tanzanians, and perhaps they buy some snacks and a bottle of water here as they go to Serengeti and as I go to Kilimanjaro. It is about what we do with our resources. When we build the airport, for example, the one we are doing at, I think an airport has been suggested, or the construction has begun in Narok. What do we do with it? It's about the returns versus the idea of having it there. And the other thing I want to talk about as I talk about that is we have seen some major projects being done, for example, tarmacking of a road in Meru. The reason why that's been given priority, it is because it is serving the hotel that's been built by William Ruto. Again, tribalism, again, the issue of politicians, again, the allocation of resources. The same as being accused of Gachagua, that the tarmacking of a certain hotel in Mombasa was given a priority because he had some influence. It was not a question of priority, it's a question of the influence by an individual, a politician, who will ultimately use tribalism, use tribal discrimination to alienate himself, to vindicate himself and to shield himself from answering the hard questions. And ultimately, as I land, I have a question for academia, not to answer now, but to answer at the end of the year 2027, because we'll be here. I want him to tell me how many more roads, how much will they have will that region have benefited in the Luo Nyanza by having Raila Odinga in the broad-based government. I answer you in advance. The only advantage that we got is the allocation of the 50 billion Kenya shillings to support his chairmanship bid that flopped big time. That's what we get from politicians. Again, I've shared some information, statistics about the disbursement of the resources. It is you to interrogate those figures, know who allocates them, and why, where does that money go to? If it does not go to buy a wheelbarrow for a million Kenya shillings, that is non-carcinogenic. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you said that the only thing the Luo Nyanza region has going so far is the bid, the cost of the bid. But I would like to differ because the people who are chilling in the stadium are saying thank you to the broad base. The people who are using the water taxis right now in the finished Bay Area, they are thanking the broad base. The people who are benefiting from the Homa Bay roads right now are thanking the broad base. So we can go on and on.
And
Going
that's
to
why
the
I
point
say
about the presidency, important it is to stay close to the presidency. Yeah, and these are the things that we are discussing and saying no to in this discussion. I am.
and that's why I say
You know,
that's a question I'll demand an answer at the end of the year 2027. Not now.
Sawa.
Thank you.
Sawa. I was just telling you tayari kuna vitu wanaona tayari. Anyway, Sam sema.
Sana mjadala. I think sometimes I ask myself, why do some other places elect judges and why do they elect state attorneys? I think it's for the reason that sometimes in the political or the current system in Kenya where you have a judge is appointed, then there is a vetting panel like the Judicial Service Commission, then they'll present names and all that. Sometimes I feel that it's tampered with, that there is no immunity and there's no guarantee that those people will ultimately give you a candidate that will punish people who steal our resources left, right, and center. So kind of I feel the reason as to why people have to vote, they give mandate directly that you are a prosecutor, you are a state attorney, you will be presenting cases on behalf of the people. That if our monies are stolen, it's up to you to make sure you gather enough evidence, table that evidence before the judges, and they'll make a decision. And some of those judges some of them are appointed and some of them elected, so that a decision is made based on merit of the case and not who knows who. If we can do the same, I don't know whether it can work. But as it is now, people who steal from us, they go unpunished. They even become more bold. They will dish out that money in form of empowerment programs. They'll appeal to us to vote for them. We'll feel like they're helping us and they like us. Then we give them another chance to go and steal even more. I think that is a problem. Number two, for 15 years that we've run this Constitution 2010, it is time we looked at whether our counties are giving us what we expected. One of the reasons as to why we have 47 counties is so that we cannot concentrate the power in the presidency. That was the original idea, that we can feel development at village level, not necessarily that we're waiting development from national government. That was the feeling when they started, but that has not happened. Most of these monies go into salaries, and some counties allocate 0% to development. That is how unfair it is. So we have to relook at whether we are getting value for constitutional offices and devolution, because it meant to solve some of these problems that we are having. Finally, Western said, without saying it, that he is very comfortable with the current president. Having eliminated Matiang'i and eliminated Maraga, then he only remained with Kasongo, and he is very comfortable with him. And that is where I disagree completely with him. I'll vote for Matiang'i. Thank you so much, Mjalala.
You must be new here. You think Western is supporting the sitting, even he's not even here, but I'll speak for him. If you think Western is supporting the sitting president, I mean, you're very, very off from the thing.
You will support someone without saying it. You eliminate the competitors. You're actually supporting him. If you eliminate competitor 1, competitor 2, you remain with him only.
No, Western has a classic problem with all politicians and how we're running politics in Kenya. I've had him enough to know that.
And that is how he hands the sitting president power second time.
Oh, you think so? All right, well, I'm not hii tutakuwa na hii mjadala siku ingine. Kesho nitawaambia saa yeye mukulane kwa sababu ai sitakufia Western, lakini what I've said I think is what I've heard him say repeatedly. Aya, Mutai, hey, unasikia mangoma huku hivi. Mutai sema. Mutai ameenda kutafuta Ruto, huyu ni bishta yake. Otherwise, asanteni sana. Mimi kutoka kwenye meza yangu nataka niwashukuru sana kwa hapa nasi. Mnaposikia kidogo nimeshikwa kidogo na majukumu hapa na pale, ndio maana hata nafurahia kwamba tumefika tamati ya kipindi yetu ya siku ya leo. Nataka niwashukuru sana sana, nimshukuru Justice kutuweka hapa na kuwa na internet bomba kabisa, ya kwamba tutakuwa na shida yote hata mushkili wa kuongea na kujadiliana. Kwa hivyo shukrani tena nyinyi wote ambao mlitoa maoni. Najua kwamba kutoa maoni inapaswa nyinyi kukaa mtulie, msubiri nafasi yenu, na pia mtoe maoni kutumia akili yenu. Kwa hivyo sichukulii kwamba ni jambo la kawaida ya kwamba mna utulivu kama ule. Asanteni sana tena kutumia akili yenu na kutupa maoni yenu bila shida yoyote. Asanteni sana, na Mutai na Justice muweze kufunga. Asanteni.
Thank you very much. That was excellent, and I appreciate all your contributions. You guys have really maintained very good, in-depth conversation with a lot of respect and all your submissions. Mutai, did you want to say something? I don't know if you're still there. You still there? Somehow, Mutai, we can't hear you. Okay, probably has the network issue. So yeah, I would have to come to a close for today. As I appreciate you and thank you for your submission, and also creating time to be here. Without you guys and your submissions, this space cannot continue growing and building the network. Ruda, today you've been something else. Thank you so much for that. That was hilarious. It made me laugh until I couldn't even believe it. So good night, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. We might be having confession moments tomorrow. Just stay tight and let's see how that goes. On behalf of myself, Mutai Mjadala, and the rest of the team, with our speakers in-house, Western is here, George is here, and everybody, Wanda. And I cannot mention all of you. Academia, Dr. Mofo, I appreciate you being part of the conversation. Malale Salama, if we meet in another space, show some respect.